Chapter 109. Congratulations on finally climbing up to me. However, do you still have the mood to fight me one-on-one? In front of the 7-star sect leader, Wang Lu finally revealed his true appearance. From a medium-sized fat man, he gradually changed into a youth's original appearance, which coincided with his calm and collected speech. In the distance, the screams of a seriously injured 7-star sect elder were once again heard. The 7-star sect leader was surprised at the opponent's young age, but at the same time he was even more determined to kill him. Yes, just now, when he heard the scream of his sect's elder, he wanted to rush to the rescue immediately, but now it was no longer necessary. Since the other side used the feng shui reversal technique to delay him for several breaths of time, he had already missed the best time to rescue them. Even if he rushed over, he would only be able to collect his companion's corpse. That being the case, he might as well take this opportunity to defeat the other side's leader. As long as he could capture this mysterious wisdom sect leader, he would be able to turn defeat into victory. The opponent's cultivation level was not high. Using his primordial spirit to sense the fluctuation of his spiritual qi and magic power, he was probably only at the upper level of the qi cultivating realm, which was 2 realms lower than him. Even if he was from a famous sect, it would be of no use. Although the 7-star sect leader was just a low-level cultivator in the immortal cultivation world, he was, after all, a Shudan stage cultivator, and he also had a magical treasure. He was confident that even those peerless geniuses of the Xingjing sect would not be able to contend against him with their high-level qi cultivating stage cultivation. If not, the opposite party didn't need to make such a complicated arrangement here, they could just face him head-on. Unfortunately, at this time, there was not much stellar glint left in the Big Dipper sword in his hand, so he could no longer use the most powerful Big Dipper sword art. Moreover, the moonlight and starlight within a radius of dozens of miles around the Dog-Ear Mountain had been taken away by the moon well, so he could not even use the Big Dipper Atlas to recreate the stellar glint. Therefore, he only had 20 to 30% of his original strength left. Even so, it was more than enough to bully a qi cultivating stage cultivator. Therefore, the sect leader kept the 7-star sword in front of his chest, pressed his palms up and down, and flattened the long sword, turning it into a 7-stars atlas. Compared with the sharpness of the Big Dipper sword, the Big Dipper Atlas was much more restrained. It didn't reveal its sharpness, but it had both offensive and defensive capabilities and was ever-changing. Being in the Big Dipper array, the sect leader was confident that unless Taoist King Pill arrived, he would at least have the ability to adapt to the situation. Wang Lu quietly watched the sect leader's performance until he fully unfolded the 7-star atlas and assumed a stance of fighting with all his might. Only then did he ask with slight surprise, "Oh, I gave you a chance and you didn't want to leave? Do you really want to fight me one-on-one?" The sect leader did not waste any time with him. He pinched 2 fingers on his right hand and countless rays of light appeared in mid-air, like a bright galaxy under the night sky. The true starry sky had already been obscured by the moon well that Wang Lu had set up. The current starry sky was naturally an evolution of the formation. The sect leader looked at Wang Lu strangely. He actually allowed him to set up the array just like that? Although this place was not his home field, with the Big Dipper Atlas in hand, if he really set up the array, then it wouldn't be surprising if the host and the guest were to shift positions. Now that he had set up the heavenly star array, as long as he ignited the light of the 7 main stars and evolved the stellar accumulations would grow and multiply endlessly. Then he would truly be in an invincible position. Even if Taoist King Pill rashly rushed in, he would still be able to contend with him for a few moves. As for dealing with a qi cultivating stage cultivator, a single glance was enough. However, Wang Lu really let his opponent set up the array. He just smiled and looked at it and even occasionally pointed out the shortcomings of the opposite party's array. Of course, most of them were just nonsense. Even if he was the top student of Spirit Sword Sect, a mere 2 years of time was not enough for him to become an array expert, let alone to comment on Shudan-level magical treasures and arrays. However, because he had read too many books in the Spirit Sword Mountain, the 7-star sect leader's mind was accidentally attracted by it, causing his speed of laying the array to slow down a bit. Inwardly, he suddenly panicked. If this happened in a peak confrontation, it would often be a sign of defeat. Even though the 7-star sect leader was a veteran of hundreds of battles, his forehead still oozed cold sweat. However, Wang Lu still leisurely looked at it and even comforted him. "Don't worry, take your time." Finally, the 7-star sect leader had finished evolving the heavenly star array. The 7 main stars also shone with a particularly dazzling light, and the stellar accumulations began to revolve, about to complete the last step of the stellar accumulations. Then Wang Lu smiled and shook his head. His finger pointed at the center of his forehead. The Emperor Bone trembled, and the non-phase sword Bone eagerly took a deep breath. The next moment, the surrounding spiritual energy in the radius of several hundred meters crazily rushed in, forming a storm. The seven-star sect leader's complexion drastically changed. He never thought that such a situation would happen. This kind of crazy gathering of spiritual energy was as if a Peking pill or even a Yuaning stage-old monster was undergoing a deep meditation. Due to the natural dispersion of the surrounding spiritual energy, such a drastic change in spiritual energy wouldn't cause too much direct damage. However, at this time, his heavenly star array was about to take shape, which was the most critical and also the most vulnerable moment. Even if the Seven Stars Atlas had thousands of preparations, the sect leader still didn't expect such a change. His left hand hastily made a seal and fiercely suppressed the spiritual energy with the power of the stellar accumulations. At the same time, his right hand pointed to the sky, guiding the spiritual energy of the main star to complete the final cycle. In terms of a loose cultivator standard, the seven-star sect leader's reaction speed was excellent. Unfortunately, Wang Lu's speed was faster than him. Break? Although it was the same truth word technique with Wang Lu's cultivation, its power was less than 1% of the seven-star sect leaders. However, this truth word technique just happened to detonate the spirit well. Boom. The spirit well collapsed and the entire feng shui line was slightly shaken. This feng shui line, which was hidden under the ground for who knows how many miles deep, issued a painful groan and then trembled. For the Blue River feng shui line, this tremble was like a giant gently blinking its eyes. However, on the battlefield it was actually an earth-shattering change. From the collapsed spirit well, a spiritual energy spring gushed out like a volcanic eruption. This spiritual energy was so fierce that it even caused the ground to tremble. The array that the seven-star sect leader had been brewing for a long time was finally interrupted by this strong impact. Although the stars in the sky had yet to disperse, the most critical stellar accumulation of the main star could no longer form a cycle, which nearly wasted half of his painstaking effort. Wang Lu chuckled and asked, "Exciting, isn't it? Is it fun?" "Fun your mother." The seven-star sect leader was full of shame and indignation, thinking, "Is this really fun?" Although the array was incomplete, his stellar accumulations had already been formed. Whether it was the seven-star sword or the seven stars atlas, at least before his stellar accumulations were exhausted, he could display the limit of a low-level Shudan stage cultivator. Could a Qi cultivating stage cultivator really withstand it? Even if he detonated more than 10 spirit wells which damaged the feng shui line and caused landslides and tsunamis, it still wouldn't be able to save him. Stellar lock. The sect leader reached out his hand to pluck a river of stars, which then turned into a silver chain that wrapped around the opponent. Wang Lu laughed, spat out his spiritual treasure, the sword of Mount Kuan, and stretched it forward. Then the silver chain was actually forced to stay away from him. The seven-star sect leader was inwardly surprised. The opposite party's cultivation was only at the Qi cultivating stage. How could he have the ability to block his stellar lock? He couldn't help but increase his strength, forcing the chain to move forward. Wang Lu didn't try to block it. He swung the sword of Mount Kuan backward, allowing the chain to approach him. However, when the chain was only 3 inches away from him, the stellar lock was blocked by an invisible force. The other end of the chain was in the seven-star sect leader's hand. Through the chain, the sect leader felt a slight tingling in his palm, as if he was being stabbed by countless swords. If he tried to get closer, the tingling suddenly doubled as if he was going to be split in half. Wang Lu still held the sword of Mount Kuan horizontally, but his imposing manner gradually merged with the sword of Mount Kuan. This was the sword bone unsheathing technique. 3 months ago he used this technique to face the powerful spiritual energy tide and split the huge wave. 3 months later the sword bone unsheathing technique had become even more skillful. With the sword of Mount Kuan in his hand, he could even block a Shudan stage cultivator spell for a moment. However, the unexpected pain did make the seven-star sect leader's reaction a moment later. And at this time, Wang Lu once again lifted the sword of Mount Kuan and slowly stretched it forward, pointing it at the chain's head. With a crisp sound, the stellar lock was hit by the sword of Mount Kuan's earth element spiritual energy, and suddenly the stars fell down, unable to be controlled. This time the seven-star sect leader was truly taken aback. Not to mention Wang Lu's sword intent that protected his body, but just now, when he used the earth element spiritual energy to link the fallen stars at that moment, his cultivation base was clearly that of high-level foundation establishment. Coupled with his exquisite and peerless immortal cultivation swordsmanship, he was able to block a Shudan stage cultivator's spell. Of course, the opposite party was not really a high-level foundation establishment stage cultivator. He merely used an array to gather the spiritual energy along the feng shui line into his body, and then forcibly promoted his cultivation level. However, from the qi cultivating stage to the high-level foundation establishment stage in one breath, this was simply unheard of. Excessive spiritual energy was tantamount to a young cultivator, and the load on the body when circulating the spiritual energy was heavy enough to be called torture. If one didn't reach the foundation establishment stage, one's magical power would run through the body from inside out to cleanse the body, directly using excessive spiritual energy or magical power would directly burst the body. Although this young cultivator's cultivation level was not high, his body was exceptionally tough. However, the stellar lock was just a simple trick. The real power of a Shudan stage cultivator was far more than this. The 7-star sect leader took a deep breath, and suddenly the sky was filled with stars that fell like a waterfall. Under the cover of the stars, a 7-star sword appeared in his hand. The first move of the 7-star sword moved based on his will, and in an instant the 7-star sword had already pierced Wang Lu's chest. Clang. Unsurprisingly, it was blocked by Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kuan. But so what? How could a qi cultivating stage cultivator contend against the power of a Shudan stage cultivator? Tisk, Wang Lu couldn't help but open his mouth. Just now, when he tried to block the sword, although he was fully prepared by using an array to gather a massive amount of spiritual energy into his body, and in an instant his cultivation level was no less than that of a high-level foundation establishment stage cultivator, but when he was lightly touched by a Shudan stage cultivator's sword, he felt that all of his bones cracked. The gap was too big. Even if his cultivation level could be temporarily increased, even if the sword of Mount Kuan's power was far superior to the 7-star sword, even if the non-Fei sword art was peerlessly exquisite, even if the non-Fei sword bone's defensive ability was the #1 in the world. But in the face of the 2 stages gap, all of these were like floating clouds. After this sword strike, the 7-star sect leader also probed the opponent's real situation. With a sneer, the 7-star sword once again chopped down. Wang Lu barely resisted it, but on the spot, he was shaken and vomited blood. After the 3rd sword strike, Wang Lu once again vomited blood. He couldn't even maintain his basic stance and began to stagger back. Although the sect leader marveled at the opponent's tenacity, to be able to block 3 sword strikes of a Shudan stage cultivator with his real qi cultivating stage cultivation level, perhaps only a few people would believe it. However, on the other hand, he would never let his opponent go. Immediately taking advantage of the victory, he retracted his 7 stars atlas, concentrated his power on the 7-star sword, and chopped down. At this time, a familiar voice came from behind his head. "TSK, you guys are really slow, you haven't finished yet." With this heavy blow, the 7-star sect leader's vision turned black, and he didn't know what happened. Chapter 110. Oh, you're awake? Sure enough, you're the best among this group of people. When the 7-star sect leader regained consciousness, that annoying youth's voice rang in his ears. Then came the girl's voice, which made his hair stand on end. Nonsense, he's the sect leader, so his cultivation is also the highest, okay? When he opened his eyes, the sect leader was standing in front of the pair of adulterous couple. He remembered that when he was about to win, he was sneak attacked from behind and lost in an unclear manner. Now that his magical power had dissipated, his body was firmly bound by a bundle of transparent silk threads, and he was humiliated into a captive. He could not help but gnash his teeth. However, the first question that came out of his mouth was, "How are my disciples?" Wang Lu lightly waved his hand. "Rest assured, they're all alive and their situation is similar to yours." The 7-star sect leader was skeptical, but eventually he felt a bit relieved, but then he felt a burst of anger. "Is this your fair and square duel?" Wang Lu looked at him with a funny look. "Indeed not, but so what? If you have the ability, go ahead and sue me." You. The 7-star sect leader really didn't expect that the opposite party would be so shameless and shameless. Wang Lu laughed again. "What? Do you feel wronged? I want to ask you, you're a dignified Shudan stage expert, yet you want to cry and shout that you want to fight me, a low-level qi cultivating stage who has cultivated for less than 3 years, and yet you're so righteous?" The 7-star sect leader was stunned. Low-level qi cultivating stage who has cultivated for less than 3 years? This setting has a problem. In his view, although the opponent was young and his cultivation was shallow, He should at least be a high-level Qi cultivating stage cultivator who has cultivated for more than 10 years. However, he didn't expect the opponent to be so young. While the 7-star sect leader was still stunned, Wang Lu said, "Actually, if I want to defeat you, I don't need too many ways. Even if it's a one-on-one fight, it's not difficult to win. I just chose the simplest and cheapest path so you don't need to feel wronged." Seeing that the 7-star sect leader was not convinced, Wang Lu shook his head, took out something from his mustard seed bag and threw it in front of him. "You should recognize this thing, right?" The 7-star sect leader looked at it with rapt attention. "Thunderbolt? A 9th-grade spirit object. Hee, it's a good hidden weapon for Qi condensation cultivators to ambush and injure people, but to use it against me? That's right. It's not enough to deal with void cores, so I prefer to use quantity to make up for it." While speaking, he opened his mustard seed bag from which several hundred thunderbolt seeds rolled out, causing the 7-star sect leader's complexion to immediately change. Being detonated by several hundred thunderbolt seeds at the same time, even a Shudan stage cultivator would not feel good. The thunderbolt seed is just the appetizer. I have the thunder pulse seed and the Vajra talisman. Since you know my background, you should also know that even if my cultivation isn't high, money is enough to deal with you. Then, without giving him any face, a certain holy maiden laughed out loud. The 7-star sect leader didn't notice the anomaly and just remained silent. Indeed, the immortal cultivation world was unfair. A Qi condensation stage cultivator, limited by their cultivation, even if they had an immortal treasure, they would not be able to display its full power. However, things like thunderbolt seeds, Vajra talisman and so on were not too restricted. Although in the hands of a Qi condensation stage cultivator, their power was only a fraction of the normal. However, if they were used by hundreds or thousands of them, it would be like 10,000 ants eating an elephant. Even if he was a Shudan stage cultivator, he still wouldn't be able to win. However, then again, using thunderbolt seeds and other things to forcibly contend against the king pill was simply burning spirit stones. Several hundred thunderbolt seeds meant tens of thousands of spirit stones, and the thunder pulse seed and Vajra talisman were even more expensive. If he really wanted to use these props to overwhelm him, he would need at least several 100,000 spirit stones. However, listening to the other party's tone, it seemed like it was not a big deal. He was indeed a disciple of a famous sect. Each and every one of them was a dead local tyrant. Wang Lu said with a smile, "Of course, if I really have to spend several 100,000 spirit stones to deal with you, I would feel distressed. Therefore, the simpler way is to spend 30 to 50,000 spirit stones to directly hire people to deal with you. With this price tag, even Taoist Master King Pill would move. What do you think?" The 7-star sect leader was inwardly distressed. After a moment he sighed. "But to arrange such a huge array on the Dog-Ear Mountain, the cost is not small. On the contrary, I didn't spend much money. It's also because I don't want to spend money that the arrangement is so troublesome." Wang Lu explained, "Whether it's the moon well or the spirit well, I ordered my followers to work day and night to make them, which consumed a lot of materials. However, I built an altar in the Wang family village, so most of them are self-sufficient. In order to deal with you, the total cost is 7,200 spirit stones. Considering that most of the facilities can still be used after the war, the real cost is only 1,000 spirit stones. What do you think? Don't you think it's cheap?" Not only was it cheap, it was simply inconceivable. The 7-star sect leader was also the leader of the sect, so he was very clear about the cost of the spirit well and the other things. If they were the 7-star sect, just building a suitable spirit well would cost them several hundred spirit stones. As for the moon well, they couldn't even get their hands on the blueprint. For a time, the sect leader's heart was filled with too many puzzlement. At the same time, he was also worried about the safety of the other elders who came with him. Seeing the 7-star sect leader's confusion, Wang Lu said, "Are you interested in seeing my sect?" The 7-star sect leader looked up. "You want me to join the wisdom sect and be your running dog? I advise you not to waste your time." Wang Lu said, "At least give me a chance to show off. Why refuse so quickly? You don't even know anything about the wisdom sect." The 7-star sect leader sneered. "I indeed don't know much about your wisdom sect, but after inquiring about the several surrounding sects, I know that you're no different than the White Moon Country's Thousand Spirit sect. Your Wanxian League usually pretends to be sanctimonious, but in essence you're not even as good as us, these unrated sections. At least we only seek money, not lives." Wang Lu indifferently shrugged, and then winked at the person behind the 7-star sect leader. "Wenbao, take this guy, we're going to stroll around the village." "Okay." Then, the seven-star sect leader felt his body lightened. He was lifted up by a big fat and powerful hand, like a piece of streaky pork in the air. Under anger and shame, the seven-star sect leader tried to struggle. Good or bad, he was a Shudan stage cultivator. Even if his magical power was dispersed and his body was bound by the flowing cloud threads, he still had the strength of a bull when he struggled. However, when that hand pressed the back of his neck, the enormous force made it impossible for him to struggle. Turning his head, the sect leader saw the person behind him. Although he was tall and sturdy, his face was still childish. He was still a young man with a simple and honest temperament. Being carried by Wen Bao, the seven-star sect leader followed Wang Lu out of the narrow warehouse. Outside the warehouse was the Wang family village, where the Wisdom sect's headquarters was located. However, the scene that greeted the sect leader's eyes was far beyond his expectation. As a conscientious and responsible sect leader, he had been to all the areas within the seven-star sect's sphere of influence, and the Dog-Ear Mountain was no exception. More than 10 years ago, when he first set foot on this place, he could only sigh at the abundance of spiritual energy here. However, there was nothing special about this mountain village. It was no different from other remote villages. It must be said that it was only slightly more affluent because it was not far from the Marquis County, and there were several wealthy families in the village. However, at this time, the Wang family village had undergone earth-shaking changes. In the middle of the village, a one-man-tall gray sphere quietly floated in midair, slowly and rhythmically inhaling and exhaling the surrounding spiritual energy. This was the spiritual energy tide that the seven-star sect leader yearned for. Below the sphere was a spiritual energy gathering base that could condense the spiritual energy and accelerate its circulation. The base's grade was not high, but its design was exquisite, and its effect was excellent. The seven-star sect leader had always wanted to install one on his broken boat, but he couldn't find the blueprint. With the sphere as the center, there were all kinds of spiritual energy gathering base facilities placed everywhere in the village. The grade of these facilities was not high, but the number was huge. Moreover, the arrangement was ingenious and the design was reasonable. Through the spiritual energy tide triggered by the sphere in the center, the entire Wang family village was shrouded in an unusually rich spiritual energy. Cultivating in such an environment, how could the efficiency only be doubled? The spiritual energy in the Wang family village itself was only relatively abundant, but after this arrangement, within the effective range of the array, it was comparable to the cultivation sites of the Wanxian League sections. In addition, the village also specially built elixir fields, alchemy rooms, and a huge moon well in the east of the village. Every night, it would gather a large amount of moonlight essence. Right now, the clear water in the well was almost overflowing, and several fishes were happily swimming in the water. Naturally, those fishes were also extraordinary. Everything in the village was no different from the low-rank immortal cultivation sects in the Wanxian League. Of course, the grade of these facilities was not high, and they couldn't be compared to the sects in the Wanxian League. However, although the village was small, it still had all the essentials. What do you think? It's pleasing to the eye, right? The seven-star sect leader suppressed the shock in his heart and sneered. For you, a disciple from a famous sect, it's just a matter of spirit stones? Wang Lu interrupted. The materials are extracted from the altar, and the rest are basically built by the villagers of the Wang family village. I'm only responsible for the blueprint design. Just by relying on those ignorant mountain people? The seven-star sect leader incredulously asked. Although the grade of the immortal cultivation facilities in the village was not high, they were, after all, things from the immortal cultivation world. In the construction process, they needed to have a considerable degree of control over the surrounding spiritual energy, which was impossible to be built by mortals. Wang Lu said with a smile, although most of them are ignorant people, after cultivating for a few months, they can at least draw the spiritual energy into their body. Some of them are even about to break through to the 8th level of Qi cultivating stage so they can do some rough work. What? The seven-star sect leader was once again shocked. In just a few months they could draw the spiritual energy into their body. This was faster than many cultivators with natural spirit roots, especially those who could break through to the 8th level of Qi cultivating stage. Did he have this speed in the past? However, on second thought, the seven-star sect leader sneered and said, "Heaven-burning blood technique?" Wang Lu didn't deny it. While leading the way to the village's school, he said, "Yes, heaven-burning blood technique. Without this thing, relying on these 6 harmonies spirit root good-for-nothings, they wouldn't be able to reach the Qi cultivating stage within 3 to 5 years. However, when you speak, use your brain, okay? With just this heaven-burning blood technique, can a group of good-for-nothings have this kind of progress? If the heaven-burning blood technique is really that useful, the Thousand Spirit sect would have already unified the Blue River region. With that, Wang Lu turned around with a mocking smile on his face. If I'm not mistaken, you should have practiced this heaven-burning blood technique. Don't you know the effect? Chapter 111. The Seven-Star sect leader had indeed practiced the heaven-burning blood technique. A few years ago, by chance, he had obtained the cultivation method of the heaven-burning blood technique through a merchant. For the sect leader, who had been lingering at the checkpoint of the 9th Shudan stage for more than 10 years, this was undoubtedly a blessing from the heavens. Due to the incomplete core cultivation method, in theory, the Seven-Star sect leader could only reach the peak foundation establishment stage. Once he accidentally ate a high-rank spirit fruit, which instantly skyrocketed his magical power, and by chance he managed to break through and condense his Shudan stage. However, after that, his cultivation path was completely plunged into darkness. Cultivating like a blind man groping an elephant, with his innate talent and perception, it was really difficult for him to go further. Thus he thought of that high-rank spirit fruit. If he could take another one. Unfortunately, spirit fruit was hard to come by. With his lucky chance, being able to obtain one was already his previous life's blessing, but now. Thus he could only seek help from the heaven-burning blood technique. This method of burning his lifespan in exchange for a massive amount of magical power was exactly the opportunity for him to break through. However, when the Seven-Star sect leader made up his mind to burn his lifespan for 10 years, he found out that although his magical power was a lot, it was far from enough for him to break through. Relying purely on the accumulation of magical power to advance his cultivation level in a more artistic way, was to prove the Tao through strength. The difficulty was far beyond the sect leader's imagination. If he wanted to break through using the heaven-burning blood technique, he would probably have to burn for 100 years. This was really not a cost-effective deal. The heaven-burning blood technique has never been used for people to slack off and take shortcuts. The Devil Sect's cultivator who invented this technique also tried all the hardships in the world, and only when his lifespan was about to run out, did he make a final gamble. In fact, most people have a serious misunderstanding about this technique. They only saw the superficial equation of the heaven-burning blood technique. Lifespan equals cultivation, but they ignored the true meaning of this technique. True meaning? Looking at the name, you should be able to see it. The heaven-burning blood technique burns one's blood, not one's life. Hey, you want to ask what the difference is? It's very simple. When you indifferently calculate how much magical power 1 year of lifespan equals, you only burn your life. When you can completely ignore your lifespan and wholeheartedly focus on the immortal path, in order to go to the next level at all costs, what you burn is blood, hot blood. In other words, the heaven-burning blood technique required the cultivator to at least have the dedication and fanaticism towards the immortal cultivation. Regardless of whether it's the White Moon Kingdom's Thousand Spirits believers who only want to rely on their higher cultivation to bully men and tyrannize women, or a seven-star void core like you who is uncertain about your future, they are both far from being able to do this. Regarding the history and characteristics of the heaven-burning blood technique, the sect leader was far less knowledgeable than Wang Lu. At this time he was just quietly listening, thinking about why Wang Lu was telling him these things. Because I feel that you need to consider this question. Since I am fully aware of the characteristics of the heaven-burning blood technique, how could I possibly abuse this technique like the Thousand Spirit sect? While they were talking, Wang Lu had already arrived in front of the Wang family village's school. Dirty old man He Yun's cadence voice came from inside, explaining the cultivation method. Although it was only some superficial basic skills, He Yun's explanation was very clear and well organized, reflecting a very profound basic skill. However, the Seven-Star sect leader knew that the old man was probably just reading from the book. The one who could really prepare these teaching materials was the young Wisdom sect leader who had only cultivated for 3 years. However, what was the point of letting him see these? Hey, you'll know when you see it. Then Wang Lu pushed open the school's door. Inside the hall, dozens of villagers were quietly sitting like stone statues, listening to the dirty old man's lecture. The Seven-Star sect leader was stunned for a moment, but the bigger shock was yet to come. From the eyes of these villagers, he saw the fanaticism, which matched with their rock-like sitting posture, like the rolling lava in the depths of the earth. That was the extreme yearning for the immortal cultivation. After watching for a while, Wang Lu withdrew from the school and asked with a smile, "Do you understand?" The Seven-Star sect leader asked with a sinking voice, "Why? Why would a group of mortals who were doomed to be unable to cultivate the immortal cultivation be so enthusiastic about it? This was completely incomprehensible. Because of ideals, Wang Lu said, but he didn't hurry to explain what the villagers' ideals were. Instead, he turned around and asked, "Do you have any ideals?" The seven-star sect leader was stunned. He didn't expect Wang Lu to ask such a question. He didn't know what to say. "You've been cultivating for 100 years and established the seven-star sect. Don't you have your own purpose? According to you, with your cultivation you can even go to the Wanxian League, so why are you trapped in a small seven-star sect? Don't you have any ideas in your heart?" Listening to Wang Lu's words, the seven-star sect leader suddenly had mixed feelings. Indeed, if it weren't for his own ideas, he would have gone to a big sect and obediently become their lackey for a few years. Naturally, there would be bones thrown at him. It was just that Wang Lu didn't leave too much time for the seven-star sect leader to be sentimental. He just smiled and said, "It's probably because of freedom and the like. Rather than being a lackey in a big sect, it's better to go out and work alone." That's how the seven-star sect came into being. To be honest, if you really went to a big sect with your qualifications, you might not necessarily have your current cultivation. The seven-star sect leader dryly chuckled twice. Inwardly, he had to admit that the other party's words were reasonable. That's why I said that it's good to have ideals. Because of ideals, you'll have a good cultivation and your own power. Even if you can't be compared to those brilliant big shots in the immortal cultivation world, it's still better than being unknown for a lifetime, right? However, your ideals are just that. While talking, a villager happened to pass by the roadside in a hurry. Wang Lu pulled him and straightforwardly asked, "Why do you cultivate to become an immortal cultivator?" Because at this time Wang Lu didn't show his real face, that villager didn't recognize him. When he was suddenly stopped by Wang Lu, he was surprised. However, when he saw Wen Bao, who was standing behind Wang Lu, he judged that the villager was a high-level member of the Wisdom sect. After respectfully saluting him, he earnestly replied, "For the sublimation of the world." His voice was loud and clear, making people dumbfounded. Wang Lu smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "You're worth teaching." Then he let him go. Turning his head, although the seven-star sect leader marveled at that villager's generous answer, he was still confused after thinking about it. The sublimation of the world? Thereupon Wang Lu simply told him about his million forerunners theory. The seven-star sect leader was dumbfounded. How could you come up with such a nonsensical theory?" Then he sneered and said, "So, in the end, the so-called ideals are nothing but a hoax?" Wang Lu asked with a smile, "It's indeed a hoax, but what's wrong with it? If the 9 regions can really have a million ascendants, it's not a bad thing. But to let a group of muddle-headed ignorant people have a reliable ideal and enthusiasm for struggle, this is simply the greatest good." The seven-star sect leader said, "Flowery words. You just used a big lie to arouse the enthusiasm of the ignorant people, and then used the heaven-burning blood technique to burn this enthusiasm, and finally..." Speaking to this, the seven-star sect leader suddenly froze. Wang Lu coldly continued, "In the end, I invested all my earnings into this group of ignorant people. In just 3 months, the Wang family village has been built to this state. Speaking of which, my initial investment is not a small amount, and so far, I haven't even gotten back a single spirit stone. So, what do you want to accuse me of? Am I too selfless?" The seven-star sect leader was silent for a long time, and then he asked, "Why?" Wang Lu asked back, "Why don't you guess? When these villagers find out the truth, they will hate you to death." Wang Lu laughed and said, "What a joke, you're a Shudan stage cultivator, how could you be so ignorant about cultivation? This heaven-burning blood technique burns one's innate lifespan, how could a cultivator not be aware of it? Now you go and ask those villagers, see if they know the truth. For an illusory ideal they don't even want their lives? Haha, of course relying on ideals alone is not enough, but the change in the Wang family village is real, and their cultivation results are not fake. Although it's just a trivial step on the immortal cultivation path, in the end they still set foot on the immortal cultivation path. For this group of ignorant people, it's enough for them to be excited." Speaking to this, Wang Lu laughed again. "Speaking of which, it's interesting. 2 days ago, a group of mountain bandits came to the vicinity of the Wang family village, wanting to take advantage of the situation. As a result, 3 chi cultivating stage villagers used sickles and wooden sticks to knock down more than 10 of them, forcing them to flee in distress. This is simply the morale that comes knocking on the door." With that, Wang Lu turned around. You have a general understanding of the wisdom sect situation. Now have you changed your mind? The 7-star sect leader bitterly said, You still want me to join the wisdom sect? Wang Lu said, Yes, this time it's still a formal invitation. Although this sect has not been established for a long time, as long as you're not blind, you should be able to see the wisdom sect's development prospects. The 7-star sect leader asked, Why me? With your background you can easily find a large number of excellent followers, even if it's the Wanxian League. Wang Lu said, I'm not interested in cultivators from the Wanxian League. Currently the wisdom sect doesn't need those pampered high-end talents with eyes on the top of their heads. A grassroots loser like your 7-star sect is just right for them. And an elite grassroots like you is even rarer. Although your aptitude and perception are only mediocre, to be able to cultivate to the Shudan stage and create your own 7-star sword art, you can be considered as a character. Being evaluated by a young chi cultivating stage cultivator in an old-fashioned way, the 7-star sect leader didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Blindly relying on external forces for a sect's development is not feasible. Throwing tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, and then spending a lot of money to hire a group of cultivators to be arrogant and then respectful, it may look like it has infinite glory, but when the spirit stones are squandered, the sect will vanish into thin air. In contrast, your 7-star sect, who are good at struggling at the bottom of the immortal cultivation world, is more suitable for the initial stage of the wisdom sect. As for you, whether you want to continue to be trapped on a barren mountain or start a new immortal cultivation method here, I think it's not a difficult choice. Speaking to this, Wang Lu's voice turned cold. Perhaps for you, the sect leader, there's a dilemma, but for the other people in the 7-star sect, there's no such problem. Moreover, you've been the sect leader for a long time. Ask yourself, is the so-called freedom that you yearn for really in your hands? The 7-star sect leader was silent for a long time. Give me a date. Okay, I gave it to you yesterday, now can you give me an answer? Chapter 112. Wang Lu didn't give the other party the time to think and the room for choice. The 7-star sect leader was indeed a talent, but in the end, he was nothing more than a rogue cultivator who was not qualified to make him pay 3 visits to the thatched cottage. Therefore, the 7-star sect leader had no choice but to succumb. With his Shudan stage, he made a big heart demon oath and henceforth became Wang Lu's lackey. From then on, the 7-star sect leader title became history and was replaced by Yi Chuchen, the deputy director of the Intelligence Revenue Service. In addition to the title of sect leader, Yi Chuchen looked like a 40 or 50 years old ordinary middle-aged man. After being appointed as the deputy director of the wisdom sect, Yi Chuchen could only wryly smile, knowing that he had no choice. The first task that Wang Lu assigned to Yi Chuchen was to win over his former subordinates. Yi Chuchen, with a disappointed smile, turned around and left. While savoring the big heart demon oath that firmly imprisoned his primordial spirit, he was also thinking about how to open his mouth when he met his old subordinates. Watching Yi Chuchen fly away, Wang Lu stood in the woods for a while and then sighed. Pretending to be pretentious is really a physical work. Humph, who forced you to pretend? Little Ling Er's voice just happened to ring behind him without warning. For cultivators who were accustomed to perceiving the change in spiritual energy with their primordial spirit, this girl was always so elusive. It was also because of this that she could easily knock down Yi Chuchen, a dignified Shudan stage cultivator. Just now I saw your calm face like a proud dragon pointing at the rivers and mountains, impassioned, I'm really not used to it. Wang Lu said with a smile, I'm also not used to it. If I continue to talk I'll get pregnant. But this is the self-cultivation of an actor. If you want to make a character like Yi Chuchen surrender willingly, you have to have some acting skills. Little Ling Er snorted. Beat him twice and he'll be obedient. However, the girl obviously didn't take this seriously. After gawking for a while, looking at the smoke rising from the Wang family village, she couldn't help but sigh. This time you really played a big game. I guess none of the sect's elders expected that you would complete the experiential learning like this. Wang Lu sneered. That's the difference between professional adventurers and mortals. It's rare for you to go down the mountain, but you're wandering around like a headless fly, waiting for the so-called opportunity to fall on your head, and then gaining so-called growth from the repeated shocks and mistakes. Don't you think that it's really stupid? Little Ling Er turned her head and glanced at Wang Lu. On the young man's face hung a trace of a cynical smile, but it wasn't hateful. From the first time they met, Wang Lu was a person who was always bursting with confidence. Some people felt that this person was unbearably arrogant, but little Ling Er felt that it was very interesting. As long as he was by Wang Lu's side, there would always be all kinds of unexpected and fun things. For example, the crazy 10 million tales of silver in Spirit Creek Town, and the unexpected performances at the Immortal Ascension Assembly. This experiential learning down the mountain was the same. While most of the disciples of Spirit Sword Sect were still looking for opportunities according to the map provided by their master, Wang Lu had already begun to strive for the world's sublimation. This was simply nonsense. Thinking to this, little Ling Er couldn't help but ask the question that had been buried in her heart for a long time. "Hey Wang Lu, I want to ask you a question." "Sister Ling, please go ahead." "This wisdom sect, do you want to play for real?" Wang Lu curled his lips. "I've already spent hundreds and thousands of spirit stones, do you think I'm not playing for real?" "Then you have to think clearly. This is not a game that you can be addicted to. The experiential learning time is only 1 year, you can't be the wisdom sect leader forever, unless you," Wang Lu said, "one of the basic qualities of a professional adventurer is that there's no need for an electric shock to prevent addiction. My experiential learning down the mountain is just for the experiential learning so that I won't abandon my main business. In the end, my interest is still immortal cultivation, not the IQ tax of ignorant people." "Really?" Little Ling Er was skeptical. Although Wang Lu's words were beautiful, during this period of time he was deeply invested in the wisdom sect, so it didn't seem like he was just playing around. However, since he said so. "Speaking of which, recently my non-phase Heart Sutra showed signs of a breakthrough. I'm afraid within 2 months, I will advance to the middle-level Qi cultivating stage. Did I tell you about this?" "Damn, you want to advance to the middle-level Qi cultivating stage so quickly?" Little Ling Er looked at Wang Lu in surprise. "It's quite inconsistent with your immortal cultivation waste status. Please don't look down on my void spirit root. Compared to Great Ancestor Dishing who also has the void spirit root, my progress is so slow that it makes people cry. Great Ancestor Dishing used 20 years to go from a mortal to a true immortal, and the entire Qi cultivating stage took less than a year. I, on the other hand, cultivated for 3 years to reach the middle-level Qi cultivating stage, which is simply like a tortoise crawling. Moreover, this is the result of the recent stimulation. First, I used my body to establish the spiritual energy tide, then I used my Qi cultivating stage to fight the Shudan stage, so breaking through is a matter of course. However, now that I have some achievements, when I return to the mountain I can explain it." Little Ling Er rolled her eyes and keenly caught the main point of Wang Lu's words. "You're not going to say anything about the wisdom sect?" "Nonsense, what should I say? If old man Fang knew about it he would definitely destroy the world with lightning, okay? But Sister Ling, you're here so I don't need to worry too much." "Damn, don't expect me to be your meat shield. My relationship with old man Fang has always been good. If he really comes, the first thing I'll do is to sell you out." "Alas, actually it's better if you don't say it. If this matter were to be spread out, the entire sect would be implicated by you. Although your theory is very good at fooling people, based on the heaven-burning blood technique alone, the Wanxian League would never recognize you." Regarding this, Wang Lu just smiled but didn't say anything. That's right, the heaven-burning blood technique was the wisdom sect's Achilles heel. Although just now when he fooled Yi Chuchen, it was beautifully said that it was hot-blooded and persistent. After all, it was not an upright cultivation method. Even if there was more enthusiasm to burn, a mere 6 harmony spirit root couldn't possibly cultivate it. In the final analysis, the wisdom sect was still in the primitive accumulation stage. There might be miracles on the immortal path, but they didn't belong to mortals. However, so what? Even the always free and easy little Ling Er actually didn't realize the essential nature of the Wanxian League, this colossus. Thinking to this, Wang Lu shook his head. His train of thought had run a bit too far. In any case, the current wisdom sect simply couldn't enter the eyes of the Wanxian League. In the future, when the scale was big enough, then he would solve the Wanxian League's problem. Yi Chuchen's defection made the 7-star sect's surviving members no longer have the will to resist, and thus they were completely annihilated. The more than 10 elders who came with him to fight against the wisdom sect were all recruited by Wang Lu. They abandoned the dark for the light and became the wisdom sect's disciples. For the wisdom sect, which had just started, this was a huge and excessive talent resource. However, with the sect leader Wang Lu, there was no need to worry about any trouble. After these 7-star sect's cultivators joined, they weren't scattered. Instead, they formed a department called the 7 Stars Agency, which was managed by Yi Chuchen. As for their job, it was neither to rob nor to extort, but to digest the 7-star sect's inheritance as fast as possible. Before the former sect leader Yi Chuchen defected, The Seven-Star Sect could be considered as a cult organization in the Great Ming country. Its power could be considered as quite large. In addition to their main base in the Eastern Host Prefecture, they had their own territory in the 5 major prefectures of the Great Ming country. A month later, more than half of these territories were taken by the Wisdom Sect. Using these territories as a stronghold, they continued to radiate the Wisdom Sect's influence to the surrounding areas. After another month, the number of Wisdom Sect's believers has exceeded 100,000. At the same time, in the Eastern Host Prefecture's Seven-Star Sect's former headquarters, Wang Lu personally built a new altar using Yi Chuchen's broken ship as the foundation, the Mobile Gale Altar. Although it was only an 8th rank altar, it was worthy of its name. Among the 8th rank altars, it was 100% the best model. When the altar was built, many of the Seven-Star Sect's people burst into tears. Not long ago, having such an altar was an extravagant dream of the Seven-Star Sect's people. Because of this, the biggest unstable factor in the Wisdom Sect was gradually eliminated. Although people still had some nostalgia for the original Seven-Star Sect in the past few months, the Wisdom Sect didn't oppress or exploit them, nor did they throw them into the cold palace. On the contrary, the Wisdom Sect boldly gave them a lot of key work to do. This kind of attitude really made people speechless. At the same time, along with the establishment of the Mobile Gale Altar, the Wisdom Sect's development speed further accelerated. In Wang Lu's words, the Wisdom Sect had since entered the double mining era. The 2 altars continued to provide resources. In particular, under Wang Lu's operation, a certain primal chaos altar would often shake 11 times in a row, which would burst out the best quality spiritual objects. In terms of wealth, the Wisdom Sect was even comparable to some of the 9th rank sects in the Wanxian League, which could be described as a vast land with abundant resources. Of course, considering that the Wisdom Sect had 100,000 followers once per capita, it was still not enough. In Wang Lu's words, this was the initial stage of the world's sublimation. In this way, after another month, the Wisdom Sect had been established for half a year. Within the Great Ming country's territory, more than half of the Wisdom Sect's territory had been printed with the traces of the Wisdom Sect, and the number of followers was close to 1 million. As for those who were attracted by the Wisdom Sect, but had yet to enter the sect, they were innumerable. However, such a rapid expansion didn't drag down the Wisdom Sect. Instead, because of the increase in followers, the Wisdom Sect's resource accumulation speed became faster and faster. In the past, when the Seven-Star Sect occupied the prefectural city, they became rich overnight. However, the accumulated wealth in that city was just the result of the common people's daily collection. Once millions of people were mobilized in an orderly manner, the accumulation speed of spirit stones would be jaw-dropping. No wonder the ancestor mentioned in the 9 regions geographical record that the 9 regions spirit stone resources were only 1/3 of the total, while the rest were scattered all over the 9 regions. It was just that it was difficult to gather and the mining cost was too high, so it was often ignored. However, now it seemed like that geographer had underestimated the 9 regions spirit stone reserves. In the Wisdom Sect's 6 months of establishment, the sect leader Wang Lu received the latest statistical report, which stated that the sect's daily collection of spirit stones was more than 5,000. Although he knew that this crazy speed was based on the unsustainable mining, which was basically impossible to sustain, when he received the report, Wang Lu still sighed. Right now, the Wisdom Sect's sphere of influence was only in the Great Ming country, but it already had such wealth and production capacity, which was not inferior to his initial optimistic expectation. If this continued, it wouldn't take too long for them to pass the primitive accumulation stage. Then, as long as this amazing wealth was properly used, the Wisdom Sect would have a qualitative leap. Of course, during this period of leap, disputes with other sects were inevitable. However, Wang Lu very cautiously avoided all the sects in the Wanxian League, and at the same time Yi Chuchen, Xie Qi and other elders constantly came forward to do public relations. Thus, he didn't receive too much pressure from the upper echelons. As for those sects that didn't belong to the lower echelons, if he could rope them in, if he couldn't, he would just destroy them. With a Shudan stage fighter like Yi Chuchen, as well as a Shudan stage holy maiden who could instantly kill a Shudan stage holy maiden, the Wisdom Sect had never been afraid of anyone in terms of force. However, the rapid development momentum of the Wisdom Sect had finally encountered a bottleneck in the 8th month since its establishment. The Great Ming country's imperial court had already noticed the existence of the Wisdom Sect. In fact, in the view of the Wisdom Sect, the reaction of the Great Ming country was a bit slow. Although in these 8 months, the Wisdom Sect had always restrained its development direction, neither challenging the authority of the government nor causing a large-scale mass incident. In fact, because of the existence of the wisdom sect, the public security of the Great Ming country had greatly improved. However, in any case, when a sect could already affect the lives of tens of millions of people in the country, the imperial court finally realized its existence. This reaction was extremely rigid and slow. However, since the other party had already noticed him, he couldn't just not do anything. Wang Lu quickly sent out a diplomatic envoy to the capital of the Great Ming country to make contact with the country's ruler. Then, the important diplomatic task between our Intelligence Revenue Service and the Great Ming country will be handed over to you. Oh no, Director, this task is really difficult for me. The temporary diplomatic envoy desperately complained. Appointing you the head of the infrastructure department as the diplomatic envoy is indeed a bit difficult, but I believe you will be able to overcome it. Alright, enough with the idle talk. Brave youth, hurry up and create a miracle. Then the director kicked the new diplomatic envoy away, letting him embark on his long journey. Wen Bao, who embarked on his long journey, felt that he had been cheated again. Chapter 113. Since more than 8 months ago, when Wen Bao was deceived by Wang Lu from the Spirit Creek town, he had been swindled one after another. For example, when the sect was first established, even the dirty old man, that wastewood, was given the title of Deputy Director of the Intelligence Revenue Service. However, he could only be a glorious worker of the Intelligence Revenue Service, commonly known as the Strong Man. All day long he was responsible for digging pits and building houses everywhere. Later, when the Wisdom sect expanded, he became the head of the Infrastructure Department, but his job was still the same, digging pits and building houses, carrying out large-scale construction. Of course, Wen Bao was also clear that Wang Lu had given him the core work of the sect. In the past 6 months, the Wisdom sect had amassed a lot of money, but they also spent it like water. Except for a small part of it, which was used to purchase 6 Harmonies powder, spirit root cultivation technique and other things, most of it was used for infrastructure. In the past, the construction of the Wang family village surprised the 7 Stars Division's head, Yi Chuchen. However, until now, the number of villages like the Wang family village in the Wisdom sect's parish had already reached 2 digits. These villages were rich in spiritual energy, thus, it was only natural that they built altars, which allowed the Wisdom sect to evolve from a dual mineral stream to a chaotic mineral stream. The construction of these villages, Wang Lu didn't personally do it. The sect spent a huge amount of money to buy materials, and then mobilized the followers to exchange the heaven-burning blood technique for cultivation base and improve the labor force. Wen Bao, as the head of the infrastructure department, played a key role in this. These villages with altars were the core areas of the Wisdom sect. In addition, according to the characteristics of each area, such as medicine fields, farms, smelting plants, alchemy rooms, and other such facilities were innumerable. Although the grade was not high, they were practical. Wen Bao, as the direct person in charge of the infrastructure department, worked day and night for these projects. After more than half a year, his whole body had gained a circle of fat. Of course, it was not because he was lazy, but because Wen Bao's cultivation base had gone up another level. Now he was about to break through to the 6th level of the Qi cultivating stage, entering the ranks of the middle level. This kind of progress, compared to Wen Bao's earthly spiritual root, was actually not surprising. However, considering the relatively conservative education policy of Lingjian School, and the general situation of the disciples' realm was not high, this speed was really shocking. Senior brother Yu Yun, who led the team to the small clear sky peak to gain experience, was only at the 6th level of Qi cultivating stage after 4 years. Although our Wisdom sect has just developed, and our strength is not very strong, sooner or later, it will spread throughout the 9 regions. This great Ming country's capital is nothing. Wen Bao choked for a moment, but he wasn't annoyed. He just sighed inwardly at his senior brother's brainwashing skill. This Yang Xiao and Guohong were originally cultivators of the 7 Stars sect, so they were not the same as the common fools. However, after joining the Wisdom sect for just a few months, they were even more fanatical than the common fools. Every day they would shout that they wanted to be one of the millions of pioneers. Their work enthusiasm was so high that it made him, as their leader, feel ashamed of his inferiority. Okay, let's go to the Mansion of Light first and hand over the introduction letter. The so-called Mansion of Light was an institution that was specifically set up by the Great Ming country to deal with matters related to the immortal cultivation world. Its function seemed to overlap with the Wanxian League's Hall of Mortal Reason, but that was not the case. The Wanxian League's Hall of Mortal Reason was more of a violent department, dealing with the problems that the mortal world's government couldn't deal with. As for the normal interaction between the immortal cultivation world and the mortal world, it was usually settled by the government's own rules. And the Great Ming country's Mansion of Light was responsible for such a responsibility. The group of 3 people walked for a moment in the city and arrived in front of the Mansion of Light. This institution that communicated between the mortal world and the immortal cultivation world was located in the center of the Kaiping Prefecture city, next to the imperial city. Its special geographical location showed its superior status. Even the guards at the gate had a trace of arrogance on their faces. When Wen Bao came forward to show his identity as a cultivator and hand over the introduction letter, the other party ignored him. Wen Bao was a simple and honest person, so he didn't mind. After handing over the introduction letter, he turned around and left, waiting for the Mansion of Light to contact him. But the 2 assistants were angry in their hearts. "Why are you so arrogant? Isn't he just a small fry?" "That's right, a mere mortal actually dares to show us face." Wen Bao bitterly smiled. Although he's a mortal, he's still a mortal of the Mansion of Light. The Great Ming country is not a first-class country, but there are many cultivators from the Wanxian League in its territory. They usually come in contact with high-end people, so naturally they look down on us country bumpkins. Speaking to this, a thought flashed through the fatty's mind. He actually guessed the reason why Wang Lu appointed him as the diplomatic envoy. With the current development of the Wisdom sect, it was still far from being able to run amok in the Great Ming country. Even though they had a lot of followers and astonishing wealth, they still couldn't break away from the low-end development pattern. Currently, the highest cultivation base in the sect was still Yi Chuchen, who was in the Shudan stage. In other words, as long as there were a few Taoist Master King Pill, they could make the Wisdom sect collapse. Therefore, this visit to the Mansion of Light was obviously to pretend to be a grandson, and no one else was more professional than Wen Bao in this task. Thinking to this, Wen Bao actually felt relieved. Since his senior brother personally appointed him to pretend to be a grandson, then he only needed to do his job well. In any case, the specific negotiation content had already been written by Wang Lu in the diplomatic letter. When the time came, he just needed to hand it over to the person in charge of the Mansion of Light, waiting for the other party to deal with it. Therefore, while appeasing his 2 indignant assistants, Wen Bao found an inn in the opening Peace Prefecture to stay, and then calmly waited for the contact from the Mansion of Light. This was also the sorrow of a small sect. If it were the cultivators from the Wanxian League, they wouldn't need to go through so much trouble. They could just directly go to the door and talk to the person in charge. The development of the Wisdom sect was still a long way to go when Bao calmed his mind and patiently waited for the reply from the Mansion of Light. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. On the 4th day, not to mention the 2 assistants who were already fuming with anger, even when Bao couldn't sit still. An entire 3 days. Wasn't it just a letter of introduction? There were only a few hundred words in total. It was just a letter of introduction explaining their identity and background and requesting to have a dialogue with the Mansion of Light. Was it that difficult to deal with? It wasn't written in Western continent language. It was clear that they looked down on him and didn't attach any importance to him. Although he had long been prepared to pretend to be a grandson, being treated with such a noble and elegant manner, Wen Bao's heart still felt aggrieved. "Elder Wen, are we going to continue to wait?" The 2 assistants' hearts were naturally doubly aggrieved. In the Wang family village and other places as the backbone of the sect, they were worshipped by countless believers. However, in the opening Peace Prefecture, they didn't even have the qualification to pretend to be a grandson. Wen Bao thought for a moment. Actually, with his temper, he didn't mind waiting. However, if that letter of introduction was really shelved like a stone sinking into the sea, then this diplomatic mission would be a failure. Very well, let's go and ask again. Thus, the 3 of them once again went to the Mansion of Light. Along the way, the 2 assistants constantly fanned the flames of their superior. Finally, they fooled Wen Bao into a murderous look, as if he would kill himself if he didn't see the person in charge. As a result, when they arrived at the entrance of the Mansion of Light, they saw a person who looked like a steward was sternly admonishing them. "You 2 cheer up. When the immortal teacher comes to visit, don't make any mistakes, otherwise I'll peel your skin, do you understand?" The 2 guards trembled in fear as they complied. Not far away, when Bao and his assistants looked at each other in dismay, Yang Xiao asked, "Immortal teacher? Are you talking about us?" When Bao laughed in spite of himself. "How is that possible? In any case, this is the capital of a country. If he wants to be an immortal teacher here, he should at least be a Taoist Master King Pill." Guohong also said, "If he really attaches so much importance to this place, how could he leave us alone in these past few days? I think it's most likely because of this immortal teacher's visit that they don't even know what to do." Guohong's heart was filled with indignation, and his voice was a bit louder. Wen Bao quickly pulled him back, but unfortunately the steward at the door still heard him. Fortunately at this time there was an urgent matter. The steward turned his head and glared at the three of them. He was not in the mood to pursue these several inexplicable people, and began to admonish the two guards about various details. This time, the Mansion of Light attached particular importance to the immortal teacher's visit, and they were particularly particular about the tedious formalities. However, without waiting for the steward to finish nagging, he saw a person hurriedly run over and whisper a few words in his ear. The steward's complexion greatly changed. With a fierce look, he warned the two guards again and then respectfully stood by the door. Not long after, in the distance, the sound of people bustling could be heard. A large group of people surrounded two young people quickly walked over. From their clothes, it could be seen that they were all high-ranking officials of the great Ming country. Usually, when these nobles went out, they would be accompanied by a group of people, and idlers would avoid them. But at this time they all put on a smiling face and followed the two people in the middle. They were sweating profusely and their image was completely ruined. Guohong was somewhat unconvinced. I don't think those two people are anything special. They are only qi cultivating stage cultivators. Is there a need to muster such a large force? Most likely they are a disciple of a big sect or the children of a great cultivator. Bah, goddamn second-generation cultivator. Yang Xiao also nodded. This Mansion of Light of the great Ming country really has no moral integrity. Their servile face is really ridiculous. Compared to our wisdom sect, it's really a world of difference. Yes, if our wisdom sect manages this country, it would be thousands of times better than now. After talking for a while, the two of them began to fantasize about the scene where they would be conferred the title of king. The more they talked, the more excited they became. However, a moment later they suddenly felt that something was wrong. According to the usual rhythm, Elder Wen Bao should have already called them to stop, but now he didn't even say a word. When they turned their heads to look, they saw Wen Bao blankly staring at the two people coming from a distance. His eyes were filled with surprise as well as a bit of sourness. What is this situation? At this time the two people also came closer and their voices could be heard. Junior sister, you in front of us is the Mansion of Light. Thank you, senior brother Zhu Qin, for connecting me to this place. Otherwise I really don't know what to do. Chapter 114. Senior brother Zhu Qin, thank you for contacting the Mansion of Light for me. It's just that, mobilizing so many people it seems a bit. Yu Xinyao, who was surrounded by the crowd, was a bit uneasy. Although she came from an immortal cultivator family and her status was not inferior to that of an ordinary noble child, the atmosphere of being surrounded by people still made her feel very uncomfortable. However, Crown Prince Zhu Qin was much calmer. Junior sister is too polite. This matter is, after all, our fault first. After receiving junior sister's official letter, there was no reply within 10 days. The efficiency of the Mansion of Light really needs to be reorganized. As soon as these words came out, the aristocratic bureaucrats around the two of them suddenly showed a mixed expression of joy and worry. The officials related to the Mansion of Light were naturally worried, while the officials who were expected to replace those people seemed to see a great opportunity in front of them. However, Yu Xinyao gently frowned. Senior brother Zhu Qin, although I may not be qualified to say these words, but since we are already cultivators, then our mortal world's identity, Zhu Qin smiled. Junior sister is right, I am no longer the crown prince of the great Ming country, but just an ordinary cultivator in the Lingjian school. So you see, this time when I went home, I didn't even have the time to pay my respects to my parents. Instead, I accompanied junior sister to register with the Mansion of Light. Yu Xinyao also smiled and nodded. For senior brother, this is indeed a bit absurd, but, after all, the path of immortal and mortal are different. During the dialogue, the surrounding bureaucrats once again fell into a mix of joy and worry. If the crown prince really wanted to give up his mortal world's power and focus on immortal cultivation, it would be an earth-shattering event for the great Ming country. By the way, junior sister, what did you come to the great Ming country to deal with this time? It's a new sect that seems to have offended a lot of people, but I'm not very clear about the specific situation. That's why I need the cooperation of the Mansion of Light to investigate. That sect is very strange. Its development momentum is very rapid, and its development method is also very special. It is said that in just a few months the number of its followers has exceeded 1 million, but so far no one knows who the leader of this sect is. Oh? So special? And it's in the great Ming country? TSK, what are the people of the Mansion of Light doing? This kind of thing needs to be entrusted to you. By the way, junior sister, what is the name of that sect? A very strange name, Wisdom Sect. While talking, Yu Xinyiao and Zhu Qin walked into the Mansion of Light. The rest of the officials lingered at the entrance for a moment before gradually dispersing. They were discussing about the chaos caused by the sudden arrival of Crown Prince Zhu Qin, as well as the various changes that might follow. Then not far away, the Wisdom Sect's 3 people who watched all of this fell into a long silence. Elder One, what should we do next? It seems that someone has colluded with the government of the Great Ming Empire to deal with us. Yihe sect leader was right. Under the tide of the new world, the old forces that are unwilling to die will certainly launch a crazy counterattack. But under the vast sea of believers, any resistance is futile. Elder One, can you still hear me? Poor Elder One, his consciousness still lingered on the scene a few minutes ago. When Zhu Qin and Yu Xinyiao entered the Mansion of Light, Zhu Qin put his hand on Yu Xinyao's shoulder. Elder One, are we going back now? At the dining table in the inn, Guohong cautiously asked, and Yang Xiao also cast him a questioning look. Regarding this direct superior, the 2 assistants had a lot of contact, so they knew him very well. His temperament was simple, honest and gentle, but his reaction was slow. He belonged to the type that could do things but couldn't make a decision. Now that they encountered an unexpected change, the 2 assistants didn't have any confidence that Wen Bao could deal with it. Wen Bao himself was also confused. The current problem was too many and too complicated, far beyond his ability to deal with. Why did junior sister Yu Xinyiao come to the Great Ming Empire? Why was she targeting the Wisdom Sect? A few months ago, when he left the sect, he secretly paid attention to Yu Xinyao's whereabouts. If he remembered correctly, she went to the east to participate in the exploration of an ancient tomb, which was estimated to take nearly a year. Could it be that it ended ahead of time? As for Zhu Qin, it was not strange for him to appear here. He was the crown prince of the Great Ming Empire, so taking advantage of his experiential learning time to go home to visit his family was human nature. However, why would he be together with Yu Xinyiao? When the 2 of them were on the mountain, they only had an ordinary martial brother and sister relationship. In addition to the experiential learning in the small clear sky peak, they didn't have any other contact. Of course, the most important thing right now was not to consider these personal affairs. As an elder of the Wisdom Sect, the real power of the Intelligence Revenue Service, he should put the sect's affairs first, that is. I want to go in and see the situation. What? Guohong and Yang Xiao were taken aback. Go in? Yes, know yourself and know your enemy and you will always be victorious. We can't let Zhu Qin and junior sister Yu. No, we can't let them collude with the Mansion of Light to make a plot against the sect. You 2 go back and report to the sect leader, I will deal with them here. Elder Yu. Guohong's eyes widened, incredulously looking at the determined face of the elder in front of him. Yang Xiao also wanted to say something but hesitated. Elder Wen, although you are indeed a gentle, kind and hard-working elder of the sect, there are some things that are really not suitable for you to do. Rest assured, no matter what, I am also a spirit sword. Wisdom Sect's elder. Wen Bao forcefully clenched his teeth. Although I am indeed not very good at this kind of thing, as long as my heart has the great ideal of sublimating the world, I will be successful in every endeavor. This is our Wisdom Sect's spiritual atomic bomb. Guohong's eyes widened even more. Elder, that so-called spiritual atomic bomb seems to have been criticized, saying that it's a mistake, I think. It doesn't matter, I'm left-handed. What? No, I mean, I have a wonderful plan that the sect leader gave me. With that, Wen Bao fiercely put the last pan-fried bun on the plate into his mouth, stood up, and went straight to the Mansion of Light. The wonderful plan in the bag was not a groundless lie. While walking, Wen Bao indeed took out a brocade bag from his mustard seed bag. After opening it, he saw that it was the note that Wang Lu had given him as a treasure, which was claimed to be able to stimulate the limit of one's potential and achieve an incredible effect. Wen Bao had never doubted Wang Lu's ability to create miracles. Therefore, although this wonderful plan was full of deceitful aura, Wen Bao still regarded it as his important card. However, Wang Lu also told him that unless it was an emergency, otherwise he shouldn't open the brocade bag. It was just that, the current situation should be regarded as an emergency, right? Senior brother, please help me. Then, with a pious heart, Wen Bao slightly trembled as he opened the note. There was only one line of words on it. You are the awakening type Wen Bao. Wen Bao sighed, pinched his thumb and index finger, and then a wisp of flame burned the note. Damn it, I knew that guy was always a master of swindling people. The awakening type Wen Bao? Awakening your sister. Why don't you give me a piece of braised pork and then let me transform into great ancestor dishing? However, although he was angry, he had no other choice. Compared to his simple and honest gentle self, perhaps the awakening type was more capable. Fine, I am the awakening type Wen Bao, I am the awakening type Wen Bao, I am the awakening type Wen Bao, I am the awakening type Wen Bao. Along the way, Wen Bao constantly muttered to himself. Gradually, the simple and honest look in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by an unconcealable excitement. Haha, junior sister Yu, I'm coming to find you. Standing in front of the gate of the Mansion of Light, facing the vigilant and puzzled eyes of the guards, Wen Bao still had that simple and honest smile on his face. In his heart, half of it was nervous and the other half was excited. Even he himself could not tell what was going on with this awakening type Wen Bao personality, but, under extreme tension, he could indeed perform amazingly. And the rest would depend on whether he could perform amazingly. Excuse me, you are... After a long silence, one of the guards finally could not help but ask, Excuse me, you are... The fatty in front of them looked ordinary, but among the millions of people in the capital, except for lunatics and idiots, not many people would be willing to stay at the gate of the Mansion of Light. In the eyes of ordinary people, the people in the Mansion of Light were all crazy and dangerous swindlers or witch doctors. So much so that the remuneration of being a guard here was much higher than in other places. Then, if this fatty was not a lunatic or an idiot? Oh, I'm looking for someone. The fatty smiled foolishly. Looking for someone? Do you have relatives or friends in the mansion? Wen Bao smiled and did not waste any more time talking with the guards. Instead, he sent a wisp of flame from his fingertip into the sky. After the flame burst, a unique magical power fluctuation spread out on a small scale. A moment later, the gate of the Mansion of Light was opened from the inside. Yu Xinyao came out with a curious face and was surprised to see Wen Bao. Senior brother Wen Bao? When Wen Bao saw the young girl's beautiful face, he was also startled. He felt as if half of his mind had turned blank, while the other half became even more excited, urging him to greet her with a calm mind that was impossible for him to have. Hee, junior sister Yu, good morning. Good morning, senior brother. The girl earnestly responded and then asked, Senior brother, are you looking for me? Yes, I'm looking for junior sister to do me a favor. Senior brother, please speak. Wen Bao smiled and pointed behind Yu Xinyao. Help me enter the gate, Yu Xinyao chuckled. The gate of the Mansion of Light is indeed not easy to enter. Then she turned her head and looked at the guards at the gate with an inquiring look. The two guards immediately felt their legs go soft. Although they haven't consulted their superiors, who dared to say no at this time. Senior brother Wen Bao, are you also here for the wisdom sect? On the way to the gate, Yu Xinyao couldn't help but curiously ask. Wen Bao was startled and inwardly panicked, thinking, how come I haven't even had the time to cover it up, yet this secret is already exposed? Seeing his blank look, Yu Xinyao thought that he had never heard of the wisdom sect, so she patiently explained, it's a sect that has recently emerged in the Great Ming country. Its development is very fast and it has caused a lot of trouble. I thought senior brother is also here for it. Then she shook her head and changed the topic. I haven't seen senior brother for a few months, you've changed a lot, your cultivation has advanced. Seeing that the topic had changed, Wen Bao inwardly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there's still a long way to go to the 6th level. Yu Xinyao was even more surprised. Senior brother is about to advance to the middle level? That's amazing. I thought my harvest in the Orchid Tree Ancient Tomb is very big, but it seems like I'm still not as good as senior brother. I'm only at the middle level of the 7th level, still far from breaking through. While the two of them were talking, suddenly, a burst of laughter came from the front. Junior sister Yu is too modest. In order to cultivate your primordial spirit, you deliberately suppressed your chi cultivating stage, but your real strength is not much worse than a 6th level cultivator. In our group of disciples, you can be regarded as one of the best. Along with the voice, Crown Prince Zhu Qin strode forward and grinned when he saw Wen Bao. Junior brother Wen Bao, I didn't expect to meet you here. Wen Bao was silent for a moment and then returned the smile. Junior brother Zhu Qin, good morning. Zhu Qin's expression suddenly stiffened. Zhu Qin. Junior brother? This dead fatty has always been respectful to Zhu Qin, calling him senior brother Zhu Qin, senior brother Zhu Qin, and senior brother Zhu Qin. But now, after not seeing him for a few months, in addition to his cultivation, his courage has also increased a lot. Thinking of this, Zhu Qin's smile gradually turned cold. Wen Bao also sneered. Idiot, you've never seen an awakening type Wen Bao. Chapter 115. The confrontation between Wen Bao and Zhu Qin did not last long. Just as Zhu Qin could no longer contain his anger and was about to worsen the situation, Junior sister Yu interrupted him in time, if you have anything to say, why don't we? Zhu Qin was stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, yes, this is not the place to talk. Let's go inside and talk. He turned around and left without asking for Wen Bao's opinion. Wen Bao was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, let's talk inside? Alright, it's approved. Junior brother Zhu, you can go first. Zhu Qin stopped in his tracks. I haven't seen you for a few months. Junior brother Wen, you've changed a lot. However, not all changes are good. As a fellow disciple, let me give you a piece of advice. Our Lingjian school is one of the top 5 in the Wanxian League. Our disciples are much stronger than those in the same realm. Therefore, you might have the illusion that you are much stronger than when you were on the mountain. However, this kind of strength is only relative to those third-rate loose cultivators. However, before he could finish, Wen Bao had already interrupted him impatiently. Didn't you hear me asking you to go in and talk? If you don't want to talk, then go away. Don't block the door. Then he strode forward and attempted to enter the room. Zhu Qin looked at him with some surprise, but he didn't move. He wanted to give him a try. After a few months of not seeing each other, Zhu Qin naturally could see that Wen Bao's cultivation had made a great progress. However, any cultivator of the Lingjian school knew that cultivation stage and real strength were not equivalent. A few months ago, the 5th elder easily defeated the Yuanying stage old monster of Xingjing sect with her King Pill stage, which was still fresh in many people's memory. Wen Bao's cultivation was at the peak of level 7 Qi cultivating stage, and Zhu Qin was also at the peak of level 7. In these 8 months, his experience was even richer and more bizarre than Yu Xinyao's. More than 2 years of accumulation in the sect suddenly erupted. Not only did his cultivation soar, but his swordsmanship and primordial spirit cultivation had also made great progress. Compared to 8 months ago, his strength had more than doubled. He really didn't believe that the useless fatty could surpass him in 8 months, even if Wen Bao's spirit root was indeed of a better grade. Therefore he stood still. At the same time he touched the little finger of his right hand with his thumb. A ripple of magic power spread throughout his body, making his skin as hard as steel. At the same time, his feet were connected to the ground, making him as stable as a rock. At this moment, even if they used a siege hammer that required dozens of strong men to push it together to hit him, he was confident that he wouldn't budge even half a step. Nowadays, many people's impression of cultivators was that of flying swords and flying immortals. In reality, if needed, cultivators could stand more steadily than anyone else. Senior brother Zhu Qin, senior brother Wen Bao, you guys? Yu Xinyao wanted to stop this meaningless collision, but unfortunately before she could make her move, Wen Bao suddenly rushed forward and collided with Zhu Qin head-on. Bang! After a muffled sound, Zhu Qin staggered back with an incredulous look in his eyes. His last step just happened to land on the threshold, and with a crack the thick threshold was directly trampled. You cough. Zhu Qin was about to say something, but he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest, causing him to cough incessantly, unable to say anything. That violent collision just now not only scattered his magic power, but also caused his breathing to go astray, injuring his lungs. The injury was not serious and his magic power could be healed, but this was a real loss. Moreover, he didn't lose to anyone else but to Wen Bao. For a moment, Zhu Qin's complexion changed several times, and he was extremely embarrassed. Wen Bao, on the other hand, simply and nimbly took this opportunity to step into the door. Glancing at junior sister Yu's surprised gaze, his heart set off a sea of joy. Ah, Zhu Qin, you big idiot. Of all things to compare with me, you just have to compete with brute force. I, your father, have been the head of the infrastructure department for 8 months, and I've almost used the king pill to carry bricks. Okay. If we were to compete with magic or one-on-one on the stage, perhaps I wouldn't have a high chance of winning. But if you want to compete with me in brute force, even those foundation establishment stage heads in the department can't win against me. You, a low-level Qi cultivating stage, are absolutely courting death, haha. Sorry, although senior brother Wang Lu always said that showing off and slapping the face is the most vulgar scene in the world, your father, I like it. The confrontation at the front door suddenly weakened Zhu Qin's momentum. After the 3 of them entered the room and took their respective seats, the dominant power was completely in the hands of Wen Bao. Regardless of Zhu Qin's attempt to stop him, Wen Bao calmly sat in the main seat of the hall and opened his mouth like an old man. Hehe, I thought that the next time we brothers and sisters meet again, it would be at least a few months later when we return to the mountain. I didn't expect that the Blue River region is so vast, but we can actually meet in the Great Ming country, what a coincidence. Zhu Qin coldly snorted, his eyes glanced at the back hall, but he didn't say anything. Yu Xinyao faintly smiled. It's indeed a coincidence, unexpected. Wen Bao also said, it's rare for the three of us to get together, why don't we talk about what we've experienced in the past 8 months? I heard that junior sister you explored an ancient tomb, did you encounter any danger? Yu Xinyao froze for a moment. She was not used to this proactive and cheerful Wen Bao, but hearing his question she honestly replied, it's not really dangerous, it was a daunting experience but no mishap. Junior sister, you're too modest. If it was really a daunting experience but no mishap, your primordial spirit couldn't be this stable. Although your cultivation is only at the 7th level, your primordial spirit is not weaker than the average 6th level cultivator. Junior sister, you shook her head. Senior brother can accurately judge the strength of my primordial spirit, which shows that I can release the power of my primordial spirit, but I can't withdraw it. I still need to think about it. Wen Bao said, primordial spirit and qi cultivating stage should be synchronized in order to have the best effect. Junior sister, you shouldn't be obsessed with primordial spirit cultivation. Thank you for reminding me, senior brother. I will pay attention to it. In just a few words of dialogue, Wen Bao's face was calm and collected, but inwardly he was so happy that he almost fainted. In the past 2 years on the Spirit Sword Mountain, he had never had such a dialogue with Yu Xinyao. Right now, this awesome senior brother style was really too satisfying. The awakening type Wen Bao was really awesome. At the same time, the suppressed Zhu Qin looked at Wen Bao with a puzzled look. He inwardly thought, could it be that the experiential learning of this sect is really that magical that it could let a waste be reborn? This is really, really strange. The 3 people in the main hall of the Mansion of Light continued to talk. Time quickly slipped away. During this period, only Yu Xinyao, who was slightly uneasy, asked if it was not good to have a private chat in a place where other people were handling official business. Wen Bao confidently said, the Mansion of Light is the place to handle the cultivators' affairs. The 3 of us are cultivators, so isn't our conversation the cultivators' affairs? Talking here is a matter of course. With a heroic spirit that completely didn't belong to a qi cultivating stage cultivator, Wen Bao, who was sitting in the main hall, became more and more happy. Next, as long as he dominated the topic, leading the 2 people's attention to a completely irrelevant place and making them forget about the damn wisdom sect, he would win. After a while, Wen Bao's mouth became dry, so he casually picked up the teacup and took a sip. Although it's cold, it's really good tea. When he turned around, he saw that junior sister you looked embarrassed. Zhu Qin, with a mocking expression, said, it's indeed good tea, drinking other people's saliva tea without even knowing it. Senior brother Wen Bao, your cultivation base has greatly increased, but your sense of shame has also greatly advanced. Wen Bao was startled. Just at this time, a cold female voice came from the back of the hall. Your Royal Highness, is the tea that I've drunk that dirty? While speaking, a luxuriously dressed woman slowly walked out. That woman was about 24 or 25 years old, with a tall stature and delicate features. However, her face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, which made people feel intimidated. The woman came out from the back of the hall and looked at Wen Bao. Originally, the awakening type Wen Bao could easily deal with Zhu Qin, but when he was stared at by that woman, he unexpectedly felt a chill in his heart, and his awakened personality also shrank a bit. The woman then looked at the teacup in Wen Bao's hand. Her pair of elegant eyebrows slightly wrinkled, but she didn't say anything. She just handed over a thick stack of letters to Zhu Qin. Your Royal Highness, this is what you're looking for, the various kinds of letters that the Mansion of Light has recently received. Before she finished speaking, Crown Prince Zhu Qin frowned. There aren't many, can't the people of your mansion even deal with these? Do you have to let junior sister you wait for 10 days? The woman sneered. Your Royal Highness, listen to what I have to say. These are just the list of letters, the rest of the letters are stored in the warehouse. There are more than 2,000 letters, does your Royal Highness want to take a closer look? Zhu Qin was surprised. So many? All the matters related to the cultivators of the Great Ming country are gathered here, how can there not be a lot? The imperial court is afraid of the Mansion of Light, so they don't allow us to set up branches everywhere. From the big ones like the Wanxian League to some small sects whose names have never been heard of, they all have to be dealt with by the people of this mansion. So, some delays are inevitable. Zhu Qin frowned. Your Excellency, what do you mean? Oh? Your Royal Highness, you don't understand? Then I will make it clear. The current Mansion of Light is not enough to meet the various requirements of your Royal Highness. Moreover, if the Imperial Court allows the situation to deteriorate, then the functions of the Mansion of Light will collapse, and it will not be strange for the Wanxian League to replace it. Zhu Qin was a bit embarrassed. These things, do you need to say it here? Without showing any weakness, Lord Qianhu asked back, just now you three can say it here, but why can't I say anything about the Mansion of Light? Seeing that Zhu Qin's face turned red from being questioned, the woman sighed. Your Royal Highness, I have no intention to embarrass you, I just want you to understand a simple fact through these questions. The current Mansion of Light has no ability to deal with the cultivators of the Great Ming country, at least the Mansion of Light built here is powerless. If you don't believe me, I can give you a simple example. This time, if I didn't end my closed-door training in advance, I'm afraid I wouldn't have found an interesting thing. There is an interesting thing? Zhu Qin subconsciously asked back, but found out that his nervous voice was ridiculous. The aura of this Lord Qianhu of the Mansion of Light was too strong. Just now, when she was sitting in the main seat and drinking tea, she didn't show it, but at this time her aura was completely released, making people unable to speak. Lord Qianhu smiled, stretched out her right hand, and 2 letters appeared out of thin air in her white and tender palm. This is the letter that fellow Taoist Yu Xinyao submitted 13 days ago, which mentioned her cultivation base, her sect, and the reason why she came to the Great Ming country. For the wisdom sect, right? Yu Xinyao nodded. Lord Qianhu smiled. Thank you for your cooperation. As far as I know, the disciples of the famous upright sects are often unwilling to abide by these cumbersome rules. On the other side, 3 days ago I received an interesting letter. While speaking, her 2 fingers pinched one of the letters together. It's the letter of introduction from the wisdom sect. The letter mentioned that they have sent 3 diplomatic envoys, and the one leading them. While speaking, the woman's eyes turned and stared at Wen Bao's pale face. His name is Wen Bao, right? The fatty exhausted all of his strength to squeeze out a smile from the corner of his mouth, but there was only one voice left in his heart. Senior brother, save me. Chapter 116. Oh, did you get into trouble again? Just as Wen Bao was inwardly screaming for help, Wang Lu's voice rang out just in time. Senior brother? Don't worry, it's me. You idiot, did you forget the psychic jade? That is. I spent countless spirit stones to buy it from the mysterious sky mansion for division chiefs like you. It's a precious tool to communicate with each other in times of emergency. I personally implanted it in you, did you forget? This I didn't forget, but senior brother, you said this jade is priceless even if you sold me, so I didn't dare to use it. Damn, how stupid are you? Forget it, time is limited. I received Guohong and Yang Zhao's urgent message. I thought you would be able to deal with it after you awakened, but it seems the situation has changed. Tell me what happened in the shortest time possible, and then I will think of a way to deal with it. Wang Lu's words were quick and urgent. Wen Bao would have been frightened, but now he felt indescribably at ease. As long as senior brother takes action, everything will be successful. The conversation in his mind only took a few seconds, and Wen Bao explained the cause and effect of the matter. Wang Lu was silent for a moment and then said, the current situation is really troublesome. That Qianhu of the Mansion of Light is a capable person. Just relying on the psychic jade or a wonderful plan is not enough. But it doesn't matter, I will do it myself. Wen Bao was surprised. Senior brother, you will do it yourself? Where are you now? Wang family village, where else? That, I'm afraid it's too late. Nonsense, of course it's too late to do it yourself, but there is no need to be so troublesome. Put your primordial spirit into the psychic jade and leave the rest to me. Wen Bao froze for a moment, trying to recall the details of the psychic jade in his mind. That was a mid-grade spirit object worth thousands of spirit stones. In addition to being able to use the primordial spirit to communicate in an emergency, its biggest use was to have the primordial spirit descend. Wen Bao's body was implanted with the psychic jade, so Wang Lu could control his words and actions like a puppet. But due to the strength of the primordial spirit, he could not do any complicated actions. At most, he could only speak and wave his hand. Senior brother, can you do it? Wang Lu sneered, to deal with this group of scum, it's enough that you can talk. Alright, you can step down. Let the professionals do the rest. After saying that, Wen Bao felt his primordial spirit tremble and was sucked into the psychic jade. Although his connection with his physical body was still there, he could only hear, not speak, see, and not move. The control of his body was taken over by Wang Lu. Senior brother, what should we do next? Wen Bao was very nervous. Originally, the awakening type Wen Bao had almost controlled the situation, but who knew that the Mansion of Light's Qian who would force him into a dead end? Sure enough, as his senior brother had said, behind every awakening type there was a local tyrant who was ready to kill them in seconds. Although he did not understand the specific meaning, it probably meant that fortune and misfortune depended on each other. After a few moments of delay, the situation in the main hall of the Mansion of Light had changed. After that female Qian who exposed Wen Bao's identity, whether it was Yu Xinyao or Zhu Qin, both of them never thought that. Zhu Qin was silent, but junior sister you couldn't help but ask, senior brother Wen Bao, why do you want to collude with the Wisdom sect? As for the Mansion of Light's Qian who, after the curtain of the good show was lifted, she took a few steps back with a trace of a smile on her face. Senior brother Wen Bao, I don't know much about the Wisdom sect situation, but that sect is obviously not a decent sect. Perhaps you've been deceived. Junior sister you had a gentle character. She didn't like to think the worst of people and even more so, she didn't like to resort to her words. At this time, it was clear that in her mind, the Wisdom sect was not just a simple sect that was not decent. The fact that she wasted her precious experiential learning time to come to the great Ming country was enough to explain the problem. All of a sudden, when Bao felt that his mind was particularly clear, he immediately thought of many things. Perhaps it was because at this time Wang Lu was using the psychic jade to remotely control him, so that when Bao could share the professional adventurer's thinking ability. However, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that things were tricky. How should he explain the Wisdom sect's matter to junior sister Yu? As the head of the infrastructure department, Wen Bao, of course, knew the world's prejudice against the Wisdom sect. Although the heaven-burning blood technique had gradually been used less recently, and when it was popularized, it was also slightly modified. However, in many people's eyes, the Wisdom sect was an out-and-out cult. Moreover, it was a cult with a rapid development momentum and a particularly great harm. Should he seriously explain the sect's purpose and ideals to junior sister Yu? How should he explain his identity as an elder in the sect? Should he conceal his senior brother and sister Ling's identity? Then just when Wen Bao was having a headache, Wang Lu, or the Wen Bao controlled by Wang Lu, opened his mouth. Junior sister Yu, actually, I joined the Wisdom sect because of you. Wen Bao almost lost his consciousness on the spot. Upon hearing this, Yu Xinyao gawked. Then she saw Wang Lu controlling Wen Bao put on a particularly natural smile and said, since I've been exposed, I have to confess. Yes, I did join the Wisdom sect. Moreover, my position in the sect is not low. I'm an elder with real power. Yu Xinyao tilted her head in confusion. What? Wang Lu said with a sinking voice, for you? Me? The young girl's eyes flashed with confusion and surprise. But what does this have to do with me? Because I like you. When Bao finally couldn't bear the emotional ups and downs and resolutely fainted, Wang Lu said with a smile, because I like you, therefore, I want to be a man worthy of you. Although my father is a country state preceptor, the power of the mortal world is meaningless to cultivators. But, junior sister Yu, you came from an immortal cultivation family in the Cloud region. Compared to you, I'm just an insignificant poor person, so how could I not strive hard? Being stared at by the opposite party's incomparably sincere gaze, Yu Xinyao's face turned crimson. She couldn't help but turn her head away, unable to speak. Zhu Qin, who had been silent for a long time, slowly said, Junior brother Wen, your explanation is a bit far-fetched. If you want to strive hard, isn't cultivating in the sect better than anything else? Why would you want to associate yourself with the evil sect? Wang Lu chuckled. If cultivating in the mountain is better than anything else, why would the elders arrange this one-year experiential learning? Since it's experiential learning, if everyone is like Crown Prince Zhu, surrounded by beauties, how different would it be from cultivating in the mountain? It's nothing more than seeing more people, seeing more things just like a passerby. I remember when the fifth elder ridiculed Taoist Master Jifeng, we were all listening from the side. Have you forgotten the elder's teachings? Being questioned by Wang Lu, Zhu Qin suddenly choked. After a moment he sneered and said, even if you want to personally experience the scenery of the 9 regions' immortal cultivation world, it's not worthwhile to throw yourself into the mud. Wang Lu chuckled again. Junior brother Zhu Qin, haven't you heard of the saying, unstained in the mud? It seems like your state of mind is still not enough. Unstained your sister. Zhu Qin almost choked on his breath. You have the nerve to say that? After Yu Xinyao and Zhu Qin were defeated one after another, that cold female voice, as expected, passed into his ears. According to your statement, you joined the Wisdom sect for immortal cultivation? Wang Lu inwardly sneered. I've been waiting for you. To be able to force the awakening type Wen Bao into a dead end, this great Ming country indeed has a capable person, unfortunately. Unfortunately, you've met a professional. Not for immortal cultivation but for the person I like, Wang Lu said, lightly denying Qianhu's assumption. Qianhu sneered. For your own personal feelings, so you, however, before she could finish, she was interrupted by Wang Lu. So it's not only for junior sister you, but also for you? Qianhu's prepared long speech was suddenly choked. Meh. Wang Lu leisurely said, yes, because I like you. Wen Bao, who had just woken up, was completely finished. At the same time, the hall seemed to have been extinguished by a sword. It was completely silent. You said? Qianhu's voice was dry and difficult. Her previous confidence was completely disrupted by Wang Lu's sudden statement. If it was an ordinary person, she would just sneer and say, what nonsense are you talking about? Then she would just use her flying sword to kill him. However, the opposite party was clearly the crown prince's martial brother. Moreover, his origin was extraordinary, which made her quite afraid. Wang Lu seized the opportunity and said with a smile, I like you, that's why I want to join the wisdom sect. While striving to become a man worthy of junior sister you, I also want to do something for you. You joined the wisdom sect because of me? Yes. Wang Lu was silent for a moment, and then said, Li Nana, your ancestral home is Eugene country in the southern heaven region. My father moved here and was recognized by the imperial court of the great Ming country to be in charge of the Mansion of Light. After the death of my father, you inherited the position. Due to the limitation of your age and aptitude, the support from the imperial court is not as strong as before, and the power of the imperial court is declining day by day, no longer able to restore its former glory. Am I right? Li Nana was somewhat surprised, but soon realized that this information was not mysterious, so it was normal for the other party to find it. In fact, at this time in the Wang family village thousands of miles away, Wang Lu had indeed just received the urgent information from Yi Chuchen. He was reading it while making it up. Your aptitude is very good, and you also have the brilliant cultivation method from your father. Now, at such a young age, you have already reached the foundation establishment stage, even faster than many disciples in the Wanxian League. What's more, you have experienced the ways of the world since you were a child, so you are much smarter than the average cultivators. But even so, your hands and feet are tied in the Mansion of Light. Even our wisdom sect's wildfire-like rapid development is powerless to stop it, so much so that we almost couldn't detect it. Of course, it's not that you're incompetent, it's that this deformed institution has already decayed. Therefore let me help you. You? What is the thing that the Mansion of Light lacks the most? It's manpower, a large number of branches that can be spread all over the country, as well as a large number of grassroots workers, just like the country's official system. However, because of too many reasons, the Mansion of Light has been a mere figurehead these past few years, like a castle in the air, lacking in support. Moreover, our wisdom sect happens to be rooted in the grassroots, and in this country's grassroots, we have an unparalleled influence. The information that you've discovered about the sect is nothing more than a bit of loose sand that leaked out from the cracks of our fingers. Of course, if we really want to change the sky, we have neither the ability nor the need. However, I think the Wisdom Sect and the Mansion of Light should establish a cooperative relationship, each taking what they need and complementing each other's weakness. You need the grassroots execution power of the Wisdom Sect, and we also need the upper-level power of the Mansion of Light. At least, we need a status. The cooperation between the two organizations, if only driven by interest, is not stable enough, then wouldn't it be better to add the emotional factor? This? Li Nana tightly furrowed her brows, crossed her arms and fell into contemplation. Obviously, she had been moved by these words. Ridiculous. At this time, Zhu Qin voiced out his objection. Are you kidding me? The great Ming country's Mansion of Light wants to collude with your cult? Cult. Wang Lu sneered. In addition to me, have you ever seen any other Wisdom Sect disciple? Your understanding of this sect is limited to the text that has been filtered and modified by who knows how many people, yet you boldly assert that this is a cult that's not worth cooperating with, even disregarding our friendship as fellow disciples. Junior brother Zhu Qin, is this the result of your 8 months of cultivation down the mountain? Ridiculous, it's really ridiculous. You, as early as thousands of years ago, great ancestor Dishing said that without investigation, you have no right to speak. Unexpectedly, until today you still haven't learned your lesson. You want to know whether the Wisdom Sect is a cult or not. It's very simple. Come with me, personally experience the life of the Wisdom Sect, conduct an in-depth investigation, and then use your brain to think about it and come to a conclusion. What do you think, junior sister? You come with me? Just consider this a rare experience. Zhu Qin froze for a long time and then laughed in spite of himself. Ridiculous, simply ridiculous, you. Before his voice fell, he heard a cold female voice next to him. Okay. I'm indeed interested in the cooperation you said. Zhu Qin felt that his eyes were not big enough to take in. Miss Qian Hu, you should think about it clearly. However, Li Nana simply ignored him. Zhu Qin had to turn his head to seek the help of another person. Junior sister, you, who knew that Yu Xinyao actually chuckled and said, I think what senior brother said is right. Without investigation you have no right to speak. What the hell? He will kill you. Yu Xinyao seriously shook her head and looked at the opposite side with her clear and gentle eyes. He won't. He said he likes me. Chapter 117. Resuscitation. When Bao felt that the age of chaos was about to come. At the same time he confessed to Yu Xinyao and Li Nana. Senior brother, you really won't give up until you kill me. I thought that I would be able to escape after calling for help, but in the end, senior brother, you kicked me to hell the moment you arrived. Alas, next would I be boiled by junior sister Yu, or braised by Li Nana? Junior sister Yu was gentle and generous. Most likely she would just break off their friendship. However, that mansion of lights Qian who looked fierce and ruthless, moreover, her cultivation level was not low. It was very likely that she would give him a big punishment, making him beg for death. Idiot, wake up. Wang Lu's voice promptly brought Wen Bao back to reality. I have temporarily controlled the crisis, but it's far from the point where I can relax. The psychic jade's time limit is almost up, you must stabilize the situation. I'm rushing here at full speed, estimated to arrive in 1 day. 1 day. That's too long, senior brother. Facing that Qian who, I can't even hold on for a quarter of an hour. Is that so? Then I'll just come a bit later. I'll remember to bring you a wreath. Wen Bao was suddenly speechless. But, in this situation, senior brother, are you going to officially show yourself? Don't talk nonsense. If my identity is exposed, it's tantamount to wasting all my previous efforts. So, remember, even if others suspect me, you must never admit that I have any relationship with you here. I, your father, have never been to the Great Ming country. As soon as I went down the mountain, I went to the Kanglin country for a vacation, understand? Ah, the Kanglin country? Yes, you, the son of the state preceptor, have secretly arranged 72 virgins for me to enjoy. In short, I have nothing to do with the wisdom sect. Even if someone points a flying sword at your dick and forces you to admit it, you must not admit it. Wen Bao was about to ask more, but Wang Lu's voice in his mind has already disappeared. The psychic jade also became dim and completely lost its effect. After regaining his composure, Wen Bao found himself still sitting in the main hall of the Mansion of Light. Li Nana, Yu Xinyao, and Zhu Qin were all pondering something. No one spoke. After a while, Li Nana was the first to break the silence. Tomorrow at this time, we'll talk about the cooperation in detail. Please prepare the materials carefully. This isn't a small matter that can be brushed off. With that, Lord Qian Hu turned around and returned to the back hall. He did not bring up the topic of I like you again. This made Wen Bao heave a sigh of relief. Thus, there were only the 3 people from Lingjian school left in the hall. After a long silence, Zhu Qin sighed and wanted to speak, but unexpectedly, Yu Xinyao was 1 step ahead and said, Senior brother Zhu Qin? I want to talk to senior brother alone, is that okay? Zhu Qin felt as if there was a stone in front of his chest. It was so stuffy that he couldn't breathe. For Yu Xinyao, this gentle and kind junior sister, it would be a lie to say that he didn't have any thoughts about her. There were a lot of female cultivators on Spirit Sword Mountain, and their quality was also quite high. However, only a few of them really caught his eye. Of course, it wasn't necessarily a strong thought. However, watching a girl who had a good relationship with him fall into the arms of a dead fatty was really hard to accept. It was as if he had swallowed a plate of fly sashimi. While he was hesitating, Yu Xinyao urged again, Senior brother Zhu Qin, I'm very sorry. Zhu Qin had to reluctantly smile. It's okay, I'll go sit in the back, you guys talk first. When he left the main hall, this level 7 Qi cultivating stage cultivator with an exceptionally solid body refining stage foundation actually staggered a few steps and almost fell. Then it's just the 2 of us, senior brother. Being stared at by Yu Xinyao's gentle and sweet smile, Wen Bao felt that his primordial spirit was about to disperse. Although junior sister Yu was very good to him before, she never had this kind of enchanting gentleness. Senior brother, you're really my good leader, my good senior brother. Just for this watery gaze, I'm willing to die right now. However, the next moment, Yu Xinyao's words made Wen Bao fall from the sky. It's senior brother Wang Lu, isn't it? Uh, the one who spoke just now was senior brother Wang Lu, isn't it? Ha, junior sister, you're really? Wen Bao was ready to deny it at the first moment. After all, Wang Lu's warning still lingered in his ears. Remember, even if others doubt you, you must never admit that you have any relationship with me here. However, Wen Bao had to admit that under the gaze of junior sister Yu, lying was easier said than done. The only thing he could do was to keep his mouth shut. Seeing Wen Bao's silence, Yu Xinyao knew that her guess was right. She couldn't help but smile. Senior brother Wen, the way you spoke just now is really not like you at all. Wen Bao was disheartened. Yes, a mere Wen Bao, even if he was awakened, how could he be a match for senior brother Wang Lu's finger? The other side only used their primordial spirit to control him to speak, yet he was able to solve the crisis that he was helpless against. Keenly aware of Wen Bao's mood, Yu Xinyao quickly explained, Senior brother Wen Bao, I just want to say that kind of aggressive speech just now is not your style. Compared to senior brother Wang Lu, you're more gentle and down to earth. This is not a shortcoming, it's just a person's characteristic. Just like in our 9 regions people have black hair and black eyes, but in the Western continent, there are many people with blonde hair and blue eyes. There's no difference in superiority or inferiority. Hearing this, Wen Bao reluctantly smiled. Being able to be gently comforted by junior sister Yu was already worth it. Just now, it was senior brother Wang Lu's words. That wisdom sect should be his doing. Hey, if it was him, then it's not strange. Senior brother Wang Lu has always been very good at doing this kind of thing. In the Immortal Gathering, although I'm just an outer court disciple, later on, Master explained to us the Peach Blossom Village and other checkpoints. It is said that only he can dig out the hidden elements of the Peach Blossom Village. He's really amazing. Wen Bao forced a smile and nodded. Of course, senior brother Wen Bao, you're also very amazing. You can always follow senior brother Wang Lu's side to gain experience together with him. If it were me, I would probably soon be left behind. Yu Xinyao somewhat dejectedly shook her head. However, in any case, since the wisdom sect is senior brother Wang Lu's doing, then you should be relieved. Probably, the rumor is wrong. I'll have to trouble you to tell senior brother Wang Lu that I'm willing to believe him, so there's no need to conduct a field investigation, which would only cause you trouble. In any case, 9 months have passed and I'm going back to the mountain in a few days. At worst, I'll just cultivate in the Spirit Creek town and consolidate the harvest from the ancient tomb exploration. Wen Bao gawked for a moment and then immediately reacted. Junior sister, you can't. Yu Xinyao slightly widened her eyes. Can't? Wen Bao inwardly panicked, knowing that he had said the wrong thing. However, if he really let junior sister Yu go back to the mountain, in case the situation of the wisdom sect was known by the elders, especially the disciplinary elder, that old man would definitely not be as easy to talk to as junior sister Yu. What's more, no matter how senior brother Wang Lu would deal with the wrath of the disciplinary elder, he, Wen Bao, as the culprit who leaked the news, would most likely die. So what should I do now? What should I do? Don't panic. Yes, don't panic, I'm the awakening type Wen Bao, the awakening type Wen Bao. Junior sister, I think, instead of leaving so early, it's better to come to the wisdom sect to take a look. The development of this sect is really interesting. These past few months of experiential learning have really benefited me a lot. Yu Xinyao still hesitated. But, senior brother Wang Lu, won't he think that I'm a hindrance? Wen Bao hastily said, you see, even a clumsy person like me, as soon as his voice fell, Wen Bao fiercely covered his mouth. His heart was filled with hatred and he wanted to slap his own mouth. You big idiot, how could you so easily spill the beans? Wouldn't that be tantamount to admitting the existence of senior brother Wang Lu? Senior brother clearly told me that even if the other side has already suspected me, I must not admit it. And sure enough, a trace of complacency flashed through junior sister Yu's eyes. If senior brother Wang Lu doesn't mind, that would be great. Later on, please take care of me, senior brother Wen Bao. Wen Bao wanted to cry but had no tears. Junior sister Yu, you're such a gentle and amiable person, how could you become bad? Scheming against a fool like me is not a skill at all. What should we do, senior brother Zhu Qin? While leaving the Mansion of Light with Wen Bao, Yu Xinyao worriedly asked, Senior brother Zhu Qin? Yu Xinyao nodded and said, I think senior brother Wang Lu doesn't want the matter of the wisdom sect to be known by the sect, right? Senior brother Wang Lu is very similar to his master. He often has unexpected words and deeds, and the sect's elders are not used to it. Therefore, I guess he probably doesn't want the matter of the wisdom sect to be known by others. However, senior brother Zhu Qin should soon guess that senior brother Wang Lu and the wisdom sect may have some relationship, and senior brother Zhu Qin is a person who cares about the sect's rules, so he may immediately write a report to the sect. That's why I want to ask, what should we do? Wen Bao froze for a moment. He felt a splitting headache, thinking, immortal path, I'm just the head of the infrastructure department, good at moving bricks and moving bricks. I can barely act like a grandson. This kind of thing that needs to use my brain is really not suitable for me. Yu Xinyao said with a smile. Then, do you want to contact senior brother Wang Lu? Wen Bao helplessly buried his face between his hands. I was wrong. One day later, Wang Lu arrived on time. In the inn where Wen Bao lived, Wang Lu cordially met with his junior sister Yu Xinyao. Junior sister, welcome to the wisdom sect. Wang Lu's straightforwardness surprised Yu Xinyao. The girl was somewhat flustered. She never thought that senior brother Wang Lu would be so straightforward. His identity should be highly confidential, right? Senior brother, believe me, no matter what you've heard before, when you personally experience my sect, you will find that the wisdom sect will not let you down. With that, Wang Lu changed the subject. Wen Bao? Wen Bao was alarmed. Senior brother? I remember that the appointment between you and Chen Huna is coming soon, right? Then what are you still standing here foolishly waiting for? No matter what, she's still a mansion leader. Do you, a small department head, want to let her wait for you? But, rest assured, this level of negotiation can't be finished in 1 or 2 days. Today at most, the wisdom sect and the mansion of light will probe each other's bottom line. Just pick a few things that you know about the sect and tell her. Remember to pick some beautiful words. It doesn't matter if it's a bit exaggerated. As for the intrigue, we'll talk about it later. Wen Bao asked, if she asks a question that I don't understand, or if she asks about the sect's secrets, what should I do? Do you still need me to teach you this? As long as you show a meaningful smile and then don't say a word, that's enough. Okay, the fool's tutorial ends here. You go deal with Chen Huna, junior sister Yu, and I will go deal with Zhu Qin. Time is pressing, let's go. Chapter 118. When Wen Bao, with a sullen face, took his 2 assistants to find Chen Hu to torture him, Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao also set off from the inn to find trouble with Zhu Qin. Senior brother Wang Lu, On the way, Yu Xinyao wanted to explain something, but Wang Lu stopped her. No need to apologize. To be able to pull such a strong helper like junior sister Yu, I'm very glad. Yu Xinyao froze for a moment, a smile hanging on her face. He was indeed worthy of being senior brother Wang Lu. He didn't need to open his mouth to know what she wanted to say, and he even comforted her in advance. Compared to before he went down the mountain, the current Wang Lu appeared to be more tactful and mature. If it was a year ago, it would be hard to imagine that he could say those words. And this kind of Wang Lu undoubtedly made her. Senior brother, what should we say to senior brother Zhu Qin later? I'm afraid he won't be easy to talk to. Wang Lu said, I know, that's why I have to come out personally, otherwise Wen Bao would be fine. That dead fatty's legs are easily weak in front of women, but he can still be used in front of men. Thinking of yesterday in the Mansion of Light, the awakening type Wen Bao suppressed the dignified Crown Prince Zhu Qin, Yu Xinyao couldn't help but chuckle. Senior brother Wen Bao's progress in these 8 months is really fast. Senior brother, your guidance is really good. Wang Lu also proudly patted his chest. The revolutionary team can temper people the most. What team? Nothing. Oh, we're here. While talking, the two had arrived at Zhu Qin's residence. Of course, it was the imperial city of the great Ming country. The security of the imperial city of a country was far more strict than that of the Mansion of Light. On both sides of the magnificent and imposing gate, there were 2 rows of more than 10 guards. Not only were they not ordinary people, their cultivation base had even reached the foundation establishment stage. The standard armor and spears on their bodies were all middle-grade magical tools, which were of considerable value. Yu Xinyao couldn't help but sigh. The great Ming country is only a middle-rank country in the Blue River region. I didn't expect the imperial city to have such an imposing manner. If I'm not mistaken, I'm afraid the imperial city is also guarded by Taoist Master King Pill. However, Wang Lu did not care at all. It's just someone hired from the mysterious Sky Mansion to keep up appearances. Perhaps the enlightened master has the King Pill, but I'm afraid that it's not very useful. Its actual ability can only be considered as a void core. Yu Xinyao was somewhat puzzled. What do you mean? To put it simply, the imperial court of the great Ming country does not have its own immortal cultivator forces. It has fostered several immortal cultivator sects, but none of them are presentable. This can be seen from the predicament of the Mansion of Light. Therefore, when the imperial court of the Great Ming country wants to use the power of cultivators, they can only buy or rent. But now, the business of the mysterious Sky Mansion is getting better and better. As long as they are willing to pay, they can even hire King Pill level fighters. Yu Xinyao tilted her head and thought for a moment. That's not bad for the Great Ming country. If it's difficult to train from the beginning, then renting ready-made fighters is also very good. Wang Lu spread out his hands. For a small country like the Kanglin country, it's indeed better to rent than to buy. But the Great Ming country is also a middle-ranked country, so they can't be so lacking in ambition. Take the King Pill in the Imperial City as an example. If one day the evil sect King Pill comes to massacre the city, do you expect this rented King Pill to fight for you? After 2 or 3 moves it will escape. Its actual effect is just a void core. Such a big country with tens of millions of people, do you think it's reliable to have a void core level cultivator to guard it? Yu Xinyao nodded. I understand, thank you, senior brother, for your advice. The two of them chatted openly at the gate of the Imperial City, which naturally fell into the eyes of the guards. One after another they cast a vigilant look at them. However, Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao obviously came from an extraordinary background, and they didn't enter the forbidden area of the Imperial City, so it was inconvenient for them to say anything. But the next moment, Wang Lu ignited a wisp of flame with one hand and sent it into the air with a loud bang, which made them feel embarrassed. According to the rules, spells were not allowed to be used around the Imperial City. Violators. Fortunately, before they could find it difficult to deal with the violators, a person quickly walked out of the city to greet the 2 uninvited guests. Zhu Qin's face hung a triumphant smile as if he couldn't wait to greet them. Yesterday he was frightened by the amazing performance of the awakening type Wen Bao. After returning to the Imperial City, Zhu Qin couldn't sleep at night. Finally, amidst his insomnia, a light flashed in his mind and he guessed some clues. He didn't have Yu Xinyao's keen intuition, which could directly perceive the existence of the psychic jade. However, he knew that Wen Bao, that dead fatty, was essentially just a waste. Although his potential was good, how much could he dig out by himself? When he was on the mountain he was an out-and-out waste. Thanks to Wang Lu's help, his cultivation base could advance by leaps and bounds. Now, after he went down the mountain for more than 8 months, even his character had changed greatly. It was obvious that Wang Lu was behind this. And that wisdom sect, of course, was also promoted by Wang Lu. Last night he got the information about the wisdom sect from the imperial spies. Just the number of more than 1 million followers was enough to make people's hair stand on end. He couldn't think of anyone who could quietly develop such a huge force, relative to the Great Ming country's intelligence system, in just half a year. However, if it was related to Wang Lu, it seemed to be a lot more normal. In fact, no matter how unwilling Zhu Qin was, he had to admit that, in terms of ability, Wang Lu, this successor disciple, was too far ahead of him. Now, facing Wen Bao, Zhu Qin could still have a sense of superiority, but if Wang Lu came, perhaps he wouldn't even have the courage to face the opposite party. He and Wang Lu didn't have any deep hatred toward each other. However, in the past few years their relationship was by no means harmonious. If Wang Lu was like the previous 2 years, other than being a bookworm, then that would be fine. However, ever since the experiential learning at the small clear sky peak, every time Zhu Qin saw Wang Lu, he would tremble with fear. However, this time was different. Once he figured out the relationship between Wang Lu and the wisdom sect, Zhu Qin quickly realized that he had caught Wang Lu's weakness. Even if the Lingjian school's management of the successor disciples was lax, it was impossible for the disciplinary elder to allow his disciples to develop a cult with a scale of more than 1 million people. This matter was obviously Wang Lu's own initiative. He was like the non-Phase Peak's 5th elder who was lawless and proud. However, in the end he was not the 5th elder. Moreover, even the 5th elder was often beaten black and blue by the sect's rules, so how could he, Wang Lu, escape the sect's sanctions? Of course, Zhu Qin didn't have any substantial evidence to prove that Wang Lu was the wisdom sect's sect leader. In fact, the Great Ming country's royal family spies could only infiltrate the middle level of the wisdom sect, and they knew nothing about the mysterious sect leader. However, why would Zhu Qin need to prove so much? He just needed to send a letter back to the sect, and the elders would come down the mountain to investigate. Therefore, when he walked out of the imperial city and saw Wang Lu, Zhu Qin's heart was jumping with joy. He inwardly said, "Kid, you also have this day. This time you took the initiative to look for me. Is it because you want me to keep the secret and not report it to the sect's elders? Haha, it stands to reason that we're from the same sect, so I shouldn't hit you when you're down. But who told me to be a model disciple who scrupulously abides by the sect's rules? Hee, senior brother Wang Lu, I guessed it's you. It just so happens that I also have something to talk to you about. Wang Lu stopped and smiled. Junior brother, please say it. Zhu Qin coughed and pretended to say, it's like this, I heard that there's a new cult in the Great Ming country, and its development momentum is extremely fast. In just half a year, its scale has already exceeded 1 million people. Wang Lu interrupted, is it the Wisdom Sect? I've also heard about it. Yes, it's the Wisdom Sect. Zhu Qin clenched his teeth, looked at the calm face of Wang Lu and inwardly said, Kid, you really know how to pretend. So, what do you want to tell me about the Wisdom Sect? Wang Lu seriously and curiously looked at Zhu Qin, as if he really had nothing to do with the Wisdom Sect. Zhu Qin sneered. It's like this, I don't know what happened to junior brother Wen Bao, but he actually went to that cult to be an elder. I think his relationship with you has always been very good, so perhaps you know something about it? Wang Lu raised his eyebrows and laughed in spite of himself. That dead fatty is not my illegitimate child, so what does it have to do with me if he wants to be an elder? Perhaps he's tired of being a soldier on the mountain, so he went down the mountain to experience the thrill of being a leader. Zhu Qin stared at Wang Lu. In other words, senior brother Wang Lu doesn't know anything about this? Wang Lu spread out his hands and didn't speak. This kind of indifferent attitude made Zhu Qin particularly annoyed. He originally intended to tease Wang Lu, but it turned out that the one being teased was him? Fine, no more playing around, let's get straight to the point. I think there's something fishy about this matter, but I can't find anything. For the safety of junior brother Wen Bao, and even more so for the reputation of our Lingjian school, I'm going to write a report to the sect's elders, asking them to come forward and investigate it. As soon as he said this, Zhu Qin's heart felt as if a boulder had fallen down. He had already revealed his cards, so he just wanted to see how Wang Lu would respond. Wang Lu's reaction was just a chuckle. Junior brother, you want to report to the elders? Yes, I'm going to ask the elders to go down the mountain to investigate it, lest some villains use the reputation of the Spirit Sword sect's disciples to commit crimes. Zhu Qin proudly said, but from the corner of his eyes, he saw that Yu Xinyao, who was standing next to Wang Lu, frowned. Wait a minute, did I do something wrong? Unfortunately, it was too late for Zhu Qin to think about it. Wang Lu smiled and asked again, Junior brother Zhu Qin, did you say you want to report to the elders? Wait a minute, what does report mean? The difference of one word is 1,000 miles. However, before Zhu Qin could say anything, Wang Lu turned his head and with a compassionate expression said, Junior sister Yu, junior brother Zhu Qin said he wants to report. Junior sister Yu's brows wrinkled even tighter. Zhu Qin was so angry that he almost vomited blood, thinking, what the F***ck does this have to do with reporting? Can't you listen to other people? Senior brother Wang Lu, I think you misunderstood, I'm not going to. Wang Lu simply ignored Zhu Qin and just looked at his junior sister Yu. He continued to sigh, Junior sister Yu, junior brother actually wants to report in front of a girl? Zhu Qin's mind was suddenly in a mess. Doing bad things is fine, but doing it in front of a girl, really, what a shame. You are the one who is ashamed, your whole family is ashamed. Junior sister Yu, I don't remember any elder educating a disciple to be a tattletale, do you remember any? Yu Xinyao gently shook her head. Junior sister Yu, do you think this kind of behavior is worth advocating? Junior sister Yu thought for a long time. It seems it's not very good. Right, tattletale people are despised, right? This is indeed easy to cause criticism from fellow disciples. Then if your senior sisters and junior sisters know that someone tattletale, will they also look down on him? Well, maybe. Not only senior sister and junior sister. Elder Hua Yun is frank and generous, she should not like tattletale people, right? Yes, Elder Hua Yun is indeed like that. If you are hated by Elder Hua Yun, it will be hard for you to get along in Lingjian school, right? That's true. If you can't get along in Lingjian school, although the Wanxian League is big, I'm afraid there is no place for you to stay. Unfortunately, why do some people have to tattletale? Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao echoed each other happily. Zhu Qin, who was next to them, was about to cry. Your uncle, this is too shameless. This is simply sophistry. However, in the face of junior sister Yu's gentle eyes, he couldn't say something like, I just want to tattletale. Wang Lu, you are too shameless, you actually pulled junior sister Yu here to be your spear. You are 100 times more shameless than tattletale. However, as the saying goes, a shameless person is invincible. In desperation, Zhu Qin had to bow his head. Senior brother, I know I will never tattletale to anyone, so please don't say it again. Wang Lu's smile was even more brilliant. It's a deal? Then he turned to Yu Xinyao and said, let's pack up and leave. Looking at the receding figures of Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao, standing at the gate of the imperial city, Zhu Qin only felt that the wind blowing behind him was particularly sad. Chapter 119. After walking for a long time, Yu Xinyao finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Senior brother, you're so bad using such a rogue trick to deal with senior brother Zhu Qin. After listening to Wang Lu's monologue performance just now, Yu Xinyao simply admired him from the bottom of her heart. At the same time, she also understood why senior brother Wang Lu insisted on taking her to find Zhu Qin. Senior brother Wang Lu was simply using her to block Zhu Qin's mouth. It was obviously a robber's logic, but by relying on her existence, Zhu Qin was choked and speechless. This kind of ability to confuse black and white really made people admire him. Ah, thank you junior sister Yu for your help. Otherwise it would not be easy to deal with Zhu Qin, this Chinibyu. Yu Xinyao couldn't help but laugh for a while and then immediately asked, but is this okay? Senior brother, if you directly show up like this it's too risky. Wang Lu sighed, what else can I do? To suppress Zhu Qin, who else can but me? Is it the awakening type Wen Bao? That fatty may be able to make Zhu Qin depressed, but to make Zhu Qin unable to move, only I can personally come forward. Yu Xinyao nodded in approval, but senior brother Zhu Qin can't just stay silent, he certainly won't be willing to be played by you like this. Wang Lu smiled, yes, in a few days as long as he comes back to his senses and gives himself a reason to convince himself, he will definitely secretly report to the sect's elders. But I only need a few days of time. Junior sister Yu blinked her beautiful eyes and looked at Wang Lu in confusion. In Yu Xinyao's view, Wang Lu's problem was not something that could be solved in a few days. A huge cult with more than 1 million followers was too eye-catching. Once the sect's elders received the report and personally went down the mountain to investigate, Wang Lu, the mastermind behind the scenes, would inevitably be exposed. At that time, the sect's rules would be strict, and a mere 5th elder would absolutely not be able to cover him up. At this time, Yu Xinyao didn't even have the time to consider the role she was playing now, whether she would be implicated or not. She was simply worried about Wang Lu. However, Wang Lu was still full of confidence. Don't worry about the professional adventurers. Junior sister, you just have to wait and see. Is that so? Alright, then I'll be looking forward to your performance, senior brother. Don't expect me. Next, you should be looking forward to Wen Bao's performance. His role is very important. While Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao were happily cooperating to take down Zhu Qin, Wen Bao and his 2 assistants were spending their days in the Mansion of Light. Then, apart from these trivial matters, does Elder Wen have anything else to say? In the main hall, Li Nana sat upright on the main seat. She held a cup of fragrant tea in her hand and took a light sip. Her posture was elegant, yet it was difficult to conceal the impatience and coldness between her brows. Wen Bao, who was sitting next to Li Nana, was already drenched in cold sweat. Tremblingly, he fished out a handkerchief from his mustard seed bag, wiped his sweat, and then squeezed out a seemingly meaningful smile without saying a word. Although the 2 assistants sitting next to him were usually proactive at this time, they were shrinking in their chairs, not daring to move, which made the scene even colder. The 3 of them were embarrassed because the aura of this Miss Li Nana of the Mansion of Light was too strong. Although her cultivation base was only at the foundation establishment stage, and although she looked like a tall but slightly thin young woman, her speech and demeanor revealed a spirit that was not inferior to men, which made the 3 men ashamed. After wiping the sweat from his forehead, the smile on Wen Bao's face gradually stiffened. Especially in the face of Li Nana's increasingly impatient eyes, he really wanted to die, which was better than suffering in this main hall. A day ago, his senior brother said that this level of negotiation could not be finished in 1 or 2 days, and that he only needed to pick up some leftover information related to the Wisdom sect. But in fact, how could it be that simple? After a few minutes of talking about the so-called leftover information, the other party became impatient. Then he avoided these meaningless topics and began to interrogate endlessly. Who is your sect master? Although you boast to your followers that you are a true immortal, you are at most a shoot-on-stage cultivator, right? The first question made Wen Bao have no choice but to take out his magic weapon, a meaningful smile. But just as he finished his expression, Qian, who put down her teacup and said coldly, "What, you can't say it? Interesting. Can't your identity be exposed?" Wen Bao smiled. You're the one who proposed to cooperate with the Mansion of Light, but now you're not even willing to reveal the identity of the sect's leader. Aren't you being too insincere? Wen Bao's heart trembled on the spot as he turned around to seek help from his two assistants. Unexpectedly, the two of them were even more unbearable. They didn't even dare to raise their heads. Fortunately, Qin Huna shook her head and changed the topic. I can't tell you about the hierarch's identity, so let's talk about you. Did you come from the Lingjian school? Then when you joined the Wisdom sect, what was the sect's attitude toward this? Was it happy to see it happen? Wen Bao's heart skipped a beat. How could he dare to tell her the truth? He just continued to smile. Qin Huna's frown deepened. You can't tell me this? Fine, let's change to another one. Then, even after several more questions, it was still the same. This Qin Huna's questions were too sharp. Each one of them was aimed at the sect's secret. Moreover, her attitude was straightforward, giving people no chance to be perfunctory. Wen Bao felt as if he just took a bath. His face had a tendency to cramp. At the same time, Qin Huna's annoyance continued to accumulate. The woman put down the teacup. Her fingers constantly tapped on the armrest. After a moment of silence, she asked another question. Rumor has it that your Wisdom sect instigates your followers to cultivate the heaven-burning blood technique. Is this true? Wen Bao was about to cry, but he still maintained his smile, which was as awkward as it could be. Qin Huna's eyes were sharp. Her body slightly leaned forward, and her imposing manner was overbearing. Don't want to say it? Then I'll take it as you acquiesce? Wen Bao was so anxious that he almost peed in his pants. Inwardly, he had already rained dog blood curses on Wang Lu. In the past, he was cheated by Wang Lu, but this time he was embarrassed in front of this cold-looking woman. An indescribable sense of humiliation suddenly rose in Wen Bao's heart. Damn it, why do I have to suffer this kind of punishment? I'm just a small infrastructure department head, good at moving bricks. You can do this kind of difficult work yourself, why do you have to torture me? Moreover, it was done in front of her. The fat youth was full of anxiety. He didn't even realize that in his impression, the woman's position was different. A moment later, Wen Bao suddenly saw the opposite Qin Huna. A trace of disappointment flashed through his eyes. It was not because of the Wisdom sect's sincerity, but because of Wen Bao. Wen Bao was puzzled. What? If there is expectation, there will be disappointment. What's there to expect from me? I'm just a... Suddenly, an impulse rose in Wen Bao's heart, which made him feel as if something exploded in his brain. The next moment, under Li Nana's surprised gaze, Wen Bao slowly straightened his body and then said, the matter about the heaven-burning blood technique is pure nonsense. Li Nana froze for a moment. She watched as the cowering snow on Wen Bao's face melted and was replaced by a symbol of indifference and calmness. The woman couldn't help but laugh. Pure nonsense. Yes, my Wisdom sect does have a unique cultivation method that can speed up people's cultivation, but that cultivation method is upright, absolutely not a devil's cultivation method. I'm afraid it's just some jealous villain spreading false information to ruin my Wisdom sect's clean reputation. Li Nana's smile became thicker. Good, if that's the case, then that's the best. Otherwise, even if you put forward the best conditions, our Mansion of Light will never cooperate with a cult. Wen Bao was startled. Looking at the smiling face of Qin Huna, he finally understood the problem. Li Nana didn't need the truth, she only needed a plausible explanation. However, he couldn't even think about it before wasting his time. No wonder the other side was disappointed. Thus, the next question and answer session finally went smoothly. You came from Lingjian School, what's the sect's opinion on this? Wen Bao said with a smile, we don't encourage it nor oppose it. The Lingjian School's policy of training disciples is to have a high degree of autonomy. As long as it doesn't violate the bottom line, anything is a very helpful experience in the immortal cultivation path. Even if it's cooperation with secular institutions? The distinction between immortal and mortal is not absolute. At least, Lingjian School has never had such a division. Our sect leader's daughter is still running an inn in the mortal world. Li Nana was really surprised. There's such a thing? That's really unexpected. Then who is your sect leader? Wen Bao said, although he's not a true immortal, he's better than a true immortal. From the Wisdom sect's development, you can see his extraordinariness, right? Oh, you said you want to cooperate, so what exactly can you provide? A deep and solid foundation among the masses, rich immortal cultivation resources, and a promising high-quality partner. So what do you need? Wen Bao froze for a moment, clenched his teeth, and then made a presumptuous guess. The official recognition from the great Ming country. One question and one answer. Time quickly slipped away. Unknowingly, outside the window, the sun had already set. After putting down the tea that had already been filled with water, Linana nodded with satisfaction. Today's conversation is very pleasant. Wenbao heaved a sigh of relief, but his mouth actually said, I feel the same way. Then let me ask one last question. Wenbao's spirit rose. Please say it. Yesterday you said you like me, is that true? Wenbao spurted out his tea on the spot. His clothes were full of tea. Linana looked at Wenbao's embarrassment with interest, and then she smiled and shook her head. It's just a joke, don't take it to heart. Tomorrow is still the same time, please prepare more materials for the details of the cooperation. Personally, I'm happy to see it happen. With that, the woman stood up. Send the guests out. Thereupon, several servants entered the hall and asked Wenbao and his two assistants to leave. Before going out, Wenbao looked back at the woman's graceful back. His heart felt lost. Chapter 120. When he walked out of the Mansion of Light, he intended to go directly back to the inn, but he saw Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao waiting side by side in the shadow of a corner. Wenbao hurriedly sent away his two assistants and quickly stepped forward. Wang Lu looked at the remaining blank expression on Wenbao's face and said with a playful smile, Fatty, sure enough, when winter comes, spring is not far away. Yu Xinyao covered her mouth and chuckled. Wenbao bowed his head in embarrassment. When he saw the smile on Yu Xinyao's face, his heart felt sour. How is the negotiation going? Speaking of business, Wenbao also restrained some of the thoughts in his heart and seriously repeated the process. Wang Lu patted the fatty's shoulder. Good, you really didn't disappoint? Wenbao shook his head in frustration. It's all based on the foundation laid by senior brother. The other party actually wanted to cooperate, I just pushed the boat along with the current, there's nothing worth mentioning. Pushing the boat along with the current is also a skill, at least the other party is willing to let you push, this is not easy. After being in contact with Wang Lu for a long time, Wenbao could hear the ridicule in the other party's words. He couldn't help but be embarrassed. Senior brother is joking, there's no such thing. It doesn't matter, sooner or later there will be. Since she has made an appointment to continue the negotiation tomorrow, you should prepare well tonight and work hard tomorrow to make the favorable impression on her go up another level. Wenbao was surprised. Senior brother, are you going to wash your hands of this? Otherwise, do you want to die? Wang Lu spread out his hands, since you talked well with the other party today, you should continue to work hard. Casually changing people in the negotiation process is like changing the profession of a writer, facing great risks. This is not the same as what we agreed at the beginning. Wang Lu patted Wenbao's shoulder. Then keep up with the times. This? Seeing that Wenbao was still uneasy, Wang Lu at least seriously explained, at this stage you are the best candidate to negotiate with that Chen Hu, because no matter what the result is, there will be room for mediation. You still have me behind you, and Linana still has the great Ming country's imperial court. Secondly, Linana and I both have the temperament to attack. When two attacks meet, there will definitely be a setback. However, we are here to negotiate, not to fight or to be turned gay. So, at this time, we need a fatty like you to come forward and ease the atmosphere. Look at you, you did very well today. Wenbao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. We almost lost our sovereignty and humiliated our country. The first time is just a little shaky. In the future, when you get used to it, the thrill will gradually come. Moreover, even if you lose your country's sovereignty, you still have me, the cult master, to back you up. What are you afraid of? The last and most important reason is that Chen Hu likes you a lot. You have to make good use of your favorability. Wenbao said helplessly, Senior brother, which eye of yours saw that she likes me? Otherwise, why do you think you haven't lost your sovereignty and humiliated your country? Wenbao was taken aback. No matter how Wenbao argued, in the end he couldn't shirk this task. Wang Lu mercilessly put the heavy responsibility of negotiation on Wenbao's shoulders, and then disappeared without a trace. Yu Xinyao without a doubt followed Wang Lu. Therefore Wenbao had to fight alone with loneliness and sorrow. However, in the next 2 days, the negotiation with Linana was not as difficult as he imagined. Linana's character was indeed strong. During the negotiation she interfered countless times, making Wenbao break out in cold sweat. He was extremely embarrassed, but every crisis was more frightening than dangerous. Linana gave Wenbao enough room to maneuver so that he wouldn't be too embarrassed. Perhaps it was because her willingness to cooperate was very strong, or perhaps it was because she really had a perverted aesthetic that she would like a fat teenager like Wenbao. However, Wen Bao simply had no time to think about these trivial details. Representing the wisdom sect to negotiate with the Mansion of Light took up all of his energy. There were too many problems that needed to be solved, and the conflicts of interest that needed to be disputed were innumerable. So much so that in these 2 days, Wen Bao and Li Nana did not rest for even a moment. They talked all night long until he, a 7th-level Qi cultivating stage cultivator, who had reached the body forging stage, had a dry mouth and blisters. 2 days later, the final result of the negotiation was revealed, which was quite gratifying. The Mansion of Light had so far obtained the most powerful support at the grassroots level. The Wisdom Sect's powerful network of more than 1 million followers would be used by them. As the person in charge of the Mansion of Light, Li Nana enjoyed the same authority as the Wisdom Sect's vice-sect leader. First of all, she could freely read the sect's information. Except for a few parts that were classified as top secret by Wang Lu, the rest were completely open to her. For Li Nana, the value of this alone was immeasurable. Not to mention the vice-sect leader's authority was far more than this. As long as she wanted, she could order the followers to carry out large-scale construction, or collect resources. Of course, the Wisdom Sect's harvest was not small. The most important point was that the Mansion of Light was willing to provide the Wisdom Sect with the Great Ming country's official qualification certification. Using the authority of a vice-sect leader in exchange for the Great Ming country's official recognition seemed to be a big loss, but in fact, for the current Wisdom Sect, the official certification was the most important part. With it, the Wisdom Sect could boldly develop from the countryside to the prefectural city. In fact, until the two sides reached the cooperation agreement, the Wisdom Sect was an out-and-out cult. Developing in the Great Ming country's territory, but without the Great Ming country's approval, and without the registration of the Wanxian League. If this wasn't a cult, then what was? It was actually jackals of the same tribe as the Seven-Star Sect. However, now that they had the Mansion of Light's approval, the Wisdom Sect had transformed into a legal sect, impressively whitewashed. Even if they wanted to develop followers in the prefectural city or even the capital, they could still confidently do so. And for the current Wisdom Sect, this could be said to be crucial. Although the number of followers was more than 1 million, and the momentum of development was still rapid, the bottleneck of the Wisdom Sect was actually not far away. Almost all of the remote villages in the Great Ming country had been covered by the Wisdom Sect, and some of the smaller counties had already fallen into the enemy's hands. In the eyes of many sects, these areas were not worth paying attention to. As for those rich counties and even prefectural cities, the Wisdom Sect still didn't have the qualification to touch them. If they didn't touch them, that would be fine, but if they did, it would be troublesome. As for developing in other countries, it was even more unreliable. Not everyone could be like the Great Ming country, who turned a blind eye to the immortal cultivation sect. The tangled attitude of the Great Ming country's imperial court toward the cultivators was actually a good soil for the rapid development of the Wisdom Sect. Now that they had the permission from the Mansion of Light, the Wisdom Sect's only bottleneck was no longer there. In the future, the explosive development could also be foreseen. Therefore, after negotiating the cooperation, Wen Bao was extremely excited. That same night, he and his two assistants drank until they were dead drunk. With his cultivation, the mortal world's fine wine was almost useless to him. The dead fatty, on the other hand, drank several hundred spirit stones in one night, extremely extravagant. Early the next morning, Wen Bao felt a splitting headache. If a small amount of wine that was full of spiritual energy was drunk, not only could it make people relaxed and happy, it could also increase their cultivation level. However, excessive drinking would injure one's primordial spirit. Wen Bao now felt that his primordial spirit, which was initially condensed, showed signs of dispersing. Perhaps, it would be difficult to recover without 3 to 5 days of recuperation. However, the 2 days and nights of negotiations were tiring, and even Qian Hu, who was in the foundation establishment stage, was physically and mentally exhausted. Since they had agreed to discuss the next step of the cooperation in 3 days, they still had enough time to rest. Coming out of the guest room, Wen Bao let out a long yawn and was ready to take a stroll around the city. First, he had nothing to do, and second, he wanted to investigate. In the future, the Wisdom Sect would inevitably set up a branch in the Great Ming country's capital. As the head of the infrastructure department, he would inevitably be busy, so it was not a bad thing to prepare in advance. However, before he could walk out of the inn's door, Wen Bao's heart suddenly jumped. His primordial spirit in his inner mansion trembled, as if a great horror was about to befall him. The next moment, a majestic voice sounded in his primordial spirit. Wen Bao. This voice was too familiar. In many nightmares this voice was always the protagonist. Wen Bao immediately felt his chest tighten. Third martial uncle? Chapter 121. Wen Bao was an inner disciple of Lingjian's school and was under the tutelage of the second elder of Misty Peak, Lu Xian. His third martial uncle was naturally the third elder of the sect, disciplinary elder Fang He. In Wang Lu's words, it was Senior Officer Ji. Lu Xian was an out-and-out strict teacher. During his 2 years of training in the Mountain Gate, Wen Bao had been scolded many times. But compared to Lu Xian's scolding, the disciplinary elder's scolding was undoubtedly much more frightening. At this time, hearing Fang He's voice, Wen Bao trembled like a sieve. "Return to your guest room. Your master and I are both there." Wen Bao wanted to escape 1,000 times, but in the end he returned to the guest room, trembling. When he opened the door, his vision went dark. Not only master and third martial uncle, but even fifth martial uncle was also present. However, compared to Lu Xian and Fang He, who were sitting upright and still with a serious and angry look on their faces, Wang Wu's posture was much more relaxed. As soon as he saw her, he greeted her with a smile. "This autumn fat is quite generous." It was early winter, and the season to put on autumn fat had already passed a few months ago. Moreover, he had been working hard as the head of the infrastructure department for the past few months, and he had almost lost a lot of weight. At this time, hearing fifth martial uncle's teasing, Wen Bao forced out a smile. "Fifth junior sister, don't talk about irrelevant topics." Fang He coldly interrupted, and then looked at Wen Bao sternly. "Do you know why your master and I are here?" Wen Bao stared blankly for a moment, then nodded helplessly. The elder had come personally. Was he still afraid that he would quibble? Confess and be lenient? Thereupon he told the whole story of how he joined the Wisdom sect. From capturing the dirty old man in the Marquis County to talking with Qian Hu through the night 2 days ago, he almost told her everything. Except for the sensitive heaven-burning blood technique, he didn't hold back anything else. This was one of Wen Bao Shui's cleverness. If it was a cultivator of the younger generation who came down from the mountain, he might have to try and deal with him. However, in front of a strict and upright elder, any little tricks would be suicidal. Since they were willing to listen to him, it meant that there was still a chance for things to turn around. Sure enough, after listening to Wen Bao's words, Lu Xian and Fang He did not immediately fly into a rage. They just silently nodded, but their complexions became even more gloomy. Only the fifth elder was still carefree. "Little fatty, you're really good. You're actually a dignified divisional cadre now." Sure enough, the cadre of a large organization is promoted quickly. As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Xian finally couldn't hold back his anger. "Fifth junior sister, you're still talking nonsense. You also understood what Wen Bao said just now. Zhu Qin's report was not false. Your precious disciple has indeed caused a huge disaster." The fifth elder blinked. "Really? Still playing dumb? What's going on with that damn Wisdom sect?" The fifth elder continued to blink. "I think this is a typical entrepreneurial behavior. The workers mainly rely on their own capital, resources, information, technology, experience, and other factors to establish their own industries and solve the employment problem. By establishing the Wisdom sect, Wang Lu has successfully set off a wave of immortal cultivation in the Great Ming country, solving the employment problem of millions of people. I think the sect should commend and encourage him and also give me, his master, 2 levels of subsidy." Before he finished, Lu Xian was so angry that he slammed the table without a care for his image. T. The fifth elder was surprised. "Here. That's not good, boss." Elder Lu Xian's sword chi suddenly bloomed. It looked like he was about to start practicing. Fang He sighed and stretched out his hand to stop Lu Xian. "Senior brother, please calm down. Our main task is not to blame fifth junior sister, but to find the person involved." Then he turned around and asked Wen Bao, "Do you have a way to contact your senior brother Wang Lu?" Wen Bao replied, "I used to, but I just used the psychic jade 2 days ago, so now I can't contact him." Lu Xian thought for a moment. "Do you know where he went?" Wen Bao thought for a moment, shook his head and said, "I really don't know." "What about him?" "Junior sister, you followed him." "You Xinyao?" Fang He's brows deeply wrinkled. That child has always been steady. How could she be together with Wang Lu? Lu Xian coldly snorted. She was incited. "You Xinyao, that child after all, doesn't have much experience, and Wang Lu's mouth is even better than his master's." The fifth elder sneered. "Better than my master? Second senior brother, you look down on me too much." Lu Xian ignored her. "Since we know he's with you Xinyao, then let junior sister Hua Yin find him. Then he pointed his finger forward, and a circle of ripples appeared in the space. In the middle of the ripples, Hua Yun's face gradually emerged. "Hey, senior brother, you're looking for me?" Hua Yun looked surprised. "Help me find Yu Xinyao." Lu Xian made a long story short, and Hua Yun didn't ask why. After nodding, she closed her eyes and opened them, and then she got the answer. "She's not far from you. You should know after using your primordial spirit to scan." After that, her small face showed a bit of curiosity. "Are you playing a human game?" Of course, Lu Xian was not in the mood to play any game. After hearing Hua Yun's answer, his face was startled. He immediately used his primordial spirit to scan, and sure enough, he found Yu Xinyao's unique magical power fluctuation. Of course, beside Yu Xinyao, he also caught a faint but unusually clear magical power fluctuation. It was Wang Lu. With the strength of Lu Xian's primordial spirit, if he really used his full strength to scan, the entire Great Ming country wouldn't be able to escape from his divine sense. However, if he rashly used his primordial spirit to scan in a foreign country, it would be quite disrespectful to the local cultivators, and might even affect some people's cultivation. Therefore, unless the situation was urgent, Lu Xian would not use too much of his primordial spirit. Therefore, when he was looking for someone, he could only ask the sect elders who were connected to the primordial spirit of the disciples. Of course, the fifth elder also came for this reason. Unfortunately, the fifth elder did not cooperate at all. Fortunately, in the end she was found, and it was Wang Lu who delivered himself to the door. Not long after, Wang Lu entered the room, and Yu Xinyao, who was next to him, very obediently stood to the side. She was just a spectator of what happened next. Seeing Wang Lu, he suddenly couldn't sit still. He stood up and said, "Wang Lu, do you know your mistake?" Wang Lu was inexplicably stunned for a long time, then he bowed his head and said, "Disciple's mistake is that I am too outstanding, making the other junior brothers and sisters look dim and dull, making them lose the motivation to continue to move forward on the road of immortal cultivation." Hearing this, he almost slashed his sword to kill this rebellious disciple. "Fifth junior sister, look, this is the good disciple you have taught." Fifth junior sister nodded her head in relief. "Not bad, neither servile nor overbearing, he has my style." Not servile nor overbearing, He's hair stood up in anger, his primordial spirit was agitated, he was almost angered to death by this fellow. However, seeing that the fifth junior sister had made up her mind to cover up for Wang Lu, there was nothing more to say to her. "Fifth junior sister, you can leave now." "Hey, so early? You haven't eaten lunch yet." "Get lost." The fifth junior sister had to resentfully leave, leaving only the two elders and three disciples in the room. Disciplinary elder he looked at Wang Lu up and down, and he couldn't help but sigh. "You are an extremely intelligent child, why did you do such a thing?" Wang Lu earnestly asked, "May I ask, uncle, what did I do wrong?" He was silent for a moment. After he was sure that Wang Lu didn't want to continue his jesting, he was actually questioning him. He couldn't help but be somewhat annoyed. "You established a cult in the mortal world, yet you ask me what did I do wrong?" Wang Lu firmly retorted, "Wisdom sect is not a cult, uncle, please examine it clearly." He slapped the table. "Absurd. Everything you did in the Great Ming country, Zhu Qin has written a report and sent it back to the sect. Now, I'll let you see if there is anything wrong with it." A letter appeared out of thin air in Wang Lu's hand. Wang Lu, as expected, pinched it and shook it toward Yu Xinyao. The young girl bowed her head and smiled, thinking that her senior brother's prediction was indeed correct. Zhu Qin's report was meticulous. It described the development process of the wisdom sect in the past 8 months. There was no embellishment, nor was there any baseless framing. This kind of boring trick would only reduce his position in the elders' hearts. Moreover, why would Wang Lu's actions need to be embellished? After reading the report, Wang Lu asked, "When the sect arranged this experiential learning, did it prohibit the disciples from establishing their own sect? Although my cultivation is shallow, establishing a sect is not prohibited by the sect's rules." He frowned and was about to speak, but Lu Xian, who personally planned this experiential learning, could not help but angrily said, "The sect arranged this experiential learning in order to let you increase your experience and enhance your cultivation, not to mislead people with lies and exorbitant taxes. You're just a chi cultivating stage cultivator, far from being anxious to accumulate wealth. I really didn't expect that the usually opinionated person like you would actually be dazzled by the world of mortals. Is the non-face peak really that poor?" Wang Lu chuckled. "Rest assured, uncle, although the non-face peak is poor, disciples' ambition has never been poor. The purpose of this experiential learning has never been forgotten. Although the profit of my wisdom sect is good, disciple has never taken a penny from it. Thus, disciple is not trying to amass wealth by establishing a sect. Uncle, please examine this matter clearly. Upon hearing Wang Lu's words, Lu Xian snorted. Even if it's not for wealth, it's still the same for power. Wang Lu didn't deny this point. Although in the Lingjian school he was a successor disciple, and his status was relatively aloof, but compared to the wisdom sect leader, whose words could move millions of people, they couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. The chaotic world of mortals is the best place to temper people's heart. The reason I sent you down the mountain is to let you be untainted by the mud, not to let you sink into the world of mortals. However, before the elder could finish his lecture, Wang Lu rudely interrupted him. Disciple has never indulged in power and wealth. In these 8 months, disciple has been cultivating non-stop, and my cultivation has made great progress. With that, he took the initiative to release the magical power fluctuation of a level 6 Qi cultivating stage cultivator. Although in front of a Yuaning stage cultivator, it was like a drop in the ocean, compared to the other 2 disciples in the room, this cultivation speed was already excellent. However, upon seeing this, Lu Xian snorted. Wang Lu, don't forget your identity. You're not an ordinary inner court disciple, you're the sect's successor disciple. You're already complacent with just a level 6 Qi cultivating stage? Do you know, even if you're not compared to the other successor disciples, even among the disciples who entered the sect at the same time as you, your cultivation is not the highest. Wang Lu was neither servile nor overbearing. If I remember correctly, it's uncle who taught the disciples not to blindly believe in the cultivation stage. Although disciples' cultivation stage is not high, disciples' strength is valiant, absolutely not comparable to those junior brothers and sisters who relied on fortuitous encounters to increase their cultivation stage. Uncle, please examine this clearly. This high-sounding and shameless speech made Lu Xian speechless for a whole incense stick worth of time. Although before he went down the mountain, he already knew that this child Wang Lu had been tormented by his master. At this time, he found out that he still underestimated his stubbornness. Not to mention anything else, just his attitude toward his uncle was already irritating. Especially the nearby disciplinary elder, Fang He, who was glaring at him. In his mind, he quickly calculated how many sect rules Wang Lu had violated. You've been a sect leader in the mortal world for too long. Your ego has inflated to the point that you've lost your mind. Wang Lu laughed. Whether or not I'm losing my mind and boasting, in fact, uncle only needs to test me. Disciple is bold enough to ask uncle to bestow me with a sword. As soon as he said this, the entire room was shocked. Chapter 122. What sword do you want me to give you? Lu Xian's face was solemn as he asked in a deep voice. Wang Lu replied, the sword of truth. Lu Xian slightly frowned, his stern eyes examined Wang Lu for a long time, and finally nodded slowly. You want to prove your innocence? Well, I agree. Lu Xian had just nodded when Fang He hesitated. Senior brother, this is against the rules. Lu Xian snorted, I know. A Qi cultivating stage disciple running to a Yuaning stage elder to ask for the sword of truth is indeed shocking. But since it is his request, the sect's rules do not stipulate that it cannot be done. But the sword of truth requires the use of the misty immortal heart. Even if it is only a little bit, it is not something that a Qi cultivating stage cultivator can bear. The so-called sword of truth was a rule that many sects had. When a person could not defend himself, he could ask the elders of the sect to give him the sword of truth. The elder would use the immortal heart to control the sword, and the sword would ask the heart. If the disciple could block the elder's sword, then he would not be able to prove himself. Of course, this sword was so powerful that it was not easy to block. The fierceness of the sword of truth did not lie in how strong the strength of the sword user was or how sharp the sword intent was, but the power of the immortal heart contained in the sword could directly interrogate the primordial spirit. Ask if you have a guilty conscience in your heart? If you do, this sword will directly penetrate your heart, break your primordial spirit, and make you collapse without a fight. If you have a clear conscience, even if the sword of truth changed the color of heaven and earth, and the mountains collapsed, it would only be a breeze. But it was easier said than done for a person to have a clear conscience. Even if it was an innocent person, every little thing in life could make them feel guilty, such as being a little lazy during cultivation or talking about someone behind their back with other disciples. Even if it had nothing to do with the question, the guilt in their heart would not be able to hide from the sword of truth and would become a huge flaw. Of course, the Sword of Truth would also leave some leeway so that the disciple could use their own cultivation level and sword techniques to offset some of the power, so that even if there was a little guilt in their heart they could barely withstand it. Therefore, even though the Sword of Truth was not 100% accurate, it was still able to avoid a lot of grievances. Therefore many sects kept the Sword of Truth. It's just that if you search the entire Wanxian League, you might not be able to find a few Qi cultivating stage cultivators who would dare to ask for the Sword of Truth. Because to a Qi condensation cultivator, those methods that could counteract the power simply couldn't be used. Cultivating Qi mainly cultivated the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and cultivated one's own magical power. The cultivation of primordial spirit was mainly done after the foundation establishment stage. Of course, it didn't mean that Qi cultivating cultivators didn't need to focus on their primordial spirit. However, even if Wuxia was able to advance her primordial spirit very quickly in actual combat, unless it was coordinated with a formation, it wouldn't have much effect. Of course, Wuxia didn't pursue actual combat ability. Her cultivation plan was tailor-made for herself, it had its own purpose. In Fang He's view, Wang Lu, a middle-level Qi cultivating stage cultivator, asking for the Sword of Truth, was simply asking for trouble. Fang He asked, "Do you think your non-phase method's defensive power is strong enough to withstand the Sword of Truth?" Wang Lu replied, "Disciple doesn't dare to be so arrogant. Therefore, martial uncle, please set this sword for 3 days later." 3 days later? Correct. Disciple needs 3 days to prepare before I can receive this sword. Lu Xian sneered. You want to play tricks to delay the time? Wang Lu said, I don't dare. Disciple will arrange everything in the Wisdom Sect's headquarters, martial uncle can rest assured. Wisdom Sect's headquarters, Wang family village? Very well, I'm leaving. Half of Lu Xian's heart was impatient, and the other half was curious. The calmness that Wang Lu showed right now was not fake. In his life, Lu Xian had seen countless people. How could he not see whether Wang Lu was really confident or just bluffing? However, with his Qi cultivating stage cultivation base, how could he receive his Sword of Truth? With his immature sect, which was established by mortals and 6 harmonies cultivators, what kind of powerful arrangement could he have? 3 days? Let alone 3 days, even if he was given 3 years, unless he could cultivate his Jade Mansion and advance from Qi cultivating stage to foundation establishment stage, otherwise no matter how he arranged, the Sword of Truth would be like a natural moat. In fact, for the vast majority of cultivators in the immortal cultivation world, even if they were in the Shudan stage, the Sword of Truth was still difficult to solve, even if they were really innocent. Wang Lu, with his Qi cultivating stage cultivation base, vainly attempted to reach the Shudan stage. Did he think he had the brilliant sword heart? With a sneer, Lu Xian picked up Wang Lu with one hand and turned into a golden sword light, flying straight toward the Wang family village. Fang He shook his head, turned into a sword light and followed his senior brother. As for Wen Bao and Yu Xinyao who were left in the room, they looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what to do. The fat man didn't even care about his worries in front of junior sister Yu, he just asked, Junior sister, what did senior brother do these past few days? Yu Xinyao said with a smile, You're asking the wrong person. In those 2 days I didn't follow senior brother. After leaving the city I followed his people to run around, signed a lot of documents and met a lot of people. But as for the specific things, to be honest, I'm still confused. As for senior brother himself, there's no need to say anything. So mysterious? Wen Bao was taken aback. It seemed like his senior brother had seriously arranged everything. However, in the face of the menacing second elder and third elder, even if he arranged a lot, could he really come back from the dead? Instead of asking me, it's better to ask the fifth elder. She should know more about Wang Lu than anyone else. When Wen Bao went to the first floor of the inn and found the fifth elder who was drinking and eating meat, the woman just smiled. Rest assured, nothing will happen. Listening to the fifth elder, Wen Bao suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. But then, even if Wang Lu is captured by old man Fang and put in confinement for 10,000 years, as long as I claim that I have no knowledge of this matter, it won't implicate me. Wen Bao was surprised. Fifth martial aunt, you said nothing will happen, don't tell me. Of course nothing will happen to me. What does Wang Lu's life or death have to do with me? He started his own business in the Great Ming country and earned a lot of money, but he never sent me a single spirit stone. Using the body and sword unity technique of a Yuanying stage cultivator, he only spent the time it took to burn a stick of incense to fly from the capital of the Great Ming country to the remote Wang family village of the Dog Ear Mountain. However, when he flew over the Wang family village, Lu Xian couldn't help but be startled. What entered his field of vision was not a barren mountain village that could be seen everywhere, nor was it a symbol of the evil sect's extravagant palace. With the Wang family village as the center, there were several hundred miles of spiritual fields. In the fields grew all kinds of spiritual grasses and elixirs. Although the grade was not high, it was obvious that they had been carefully taken care of, and their growth was gratifying. What was even rarer was that, although the spiritual energy here was not particularly rich, it was extremely well utilized. Almost every bit of it was not wasted. It was evenly and methodically distributed all over the mountain. And in the middle of the Wang family village, there was a strange altar, which was like a heart that triggered the spiritual energy tide, providing the entire village and the surrounding spiritual fields with an endless supply of spiritual energy. Not bad. After looking at it from the air for a while, even though Lu Xian disapproved of Wang Lu's waste of energy to run the evil sect, he had to admit that the management of this evil sect's headquarters was really good. Although it couldn't be compared to the big sects, it was not much worse than those rank 9 sections. Wang Lu smiled and explained, although the Wang family village is the birthplace of the wisdom sect, its condition is not particularly good, therefore the scale of its development is limited. However, after my adjustment, the geomancy of this place has changed. In less than 50 years, the spiritual energy along the feng shui line will be more and more abundant, and this place will become a real paradise. After looking at it for a while, Lu Xian nodded in agreement with Wang Lu's statement. The spiritual energy in the 9 regions was not constant, the total amount was conserved, and the spiritual energy along the feng shui line was also the same. It's not that if you have more, I have less, and if you have less, I have more. As long as it was properly managed, the spiritual energy environment of a place could be improved, from an ordinary place to a place with good geomancy. The Shengjing sect in the central region, where the Shengjing sect was located thousands of years ago, was just a plain that could be seen everywhere in the 9 regions. Of course, in this world there were no ideals to speak of. Most of the time, even the cultivators who were supposed to be detached were more accustomed to plundering. In any case, the 9 regions was so big that even if they plunder for a lifetime, they would never be able to exhaust it. Therefore, in Lu Xian's view, the wisdom sect was obviously just a cult, and Wang Lu's experiential learning time was obviously only 1 year, yet he was willing to make this kind of long-term plan. It was really hard to believe that he was really doing this for power or money. Thinking to this, Lu Xian asked, "You want me to come here to show off your achievement?" Having said that, he continued to look at the Wang family village. There was quite a bit of admiration in his eyes. Wang Lu said with a smile, "In addition to the altar in the middle of the village, there's really nothing worth showing off in the Wang family village. There are at least a dozen of such villages in the wisdom sect. This place, after all, has poor innate conditions, so the layout is limited." Lu Xian snorted and didn't let Wang Lu continue to show off. "Just focus on your arrangement, I'll give you 3 days. Third junior brother and I will watch over here. You can arrange whatever you want as long as you don't leave the radius of 50 kilometers. Wang Lu didn't say much. Soon, he found the wisdom sect's higher-ups in the village and quickly began his own arrangement. Just like what Lu Xian thought, with his qi cultivating stage, even if it was the combination of non-phase method and void spirit root, in theory it was just a fantasy. Thus, the key to going against the heaven was naturally the arrangement in these 3 days. Wang Lu's arrangement was extraordinary. For the Wang family village, it was simply a big move that could change the heaven and earth. If Wang Lu hadn't notified the wisdom sect's higher-ups in advance a few days ago and made the corresponding manpower and material arrangement, it would be too late for Wang Lu's plan to be realized. However, even so, with the wisdom sect's current strength, it was still quite difficult to meet Wang Lu's requirements. The higher-ups of the sect were urgently summoned to the village a day ago and began to work frantically to prepare for the early stage. When Wang Lu personally arrived and announced the plan, those vice-sect leaders and elders who were accustomed to the rapid development of the wisdom sect and the construction of miracles simply stared their eyes out. Yi Chuchen, who could be called Wang Lu's most capable assistant, softly whispered, "Sect leader, the amount of work is too huge. Let's not talk about the technical difficulties, just the investment of resources. Brother Yi, do you want to admit that you're incompetent and can't complete the sect leader's task?" At this time, the one who spoke was another vice-sect leader of the wisdom sect, Taoist Ming Yun. This Taoist was quite a famous loose cultivator in the immortal cultivation world of the Blue River region. His cultivation base was low-level Shudan stage, and his character was somewhat crazy. His conduct was neither good nor evil, which gave many people a headache. 5 months ago, Taoist Ming Yun came uninvited. At that time, Yi Chuchen thought that he came to challenge the sect and was taken aback. However, he found out that this person actually came because of the sect's reputation and applied to join the sect. Thus, he was even more surprised. As for whose name he admired? Nonsense, of course it was the name of the sect leader Wang Lu. Wang Lu didn't know what kind of demonic method this Taoist Ming Yun cultivated, which caused his primordial spirit to distort. Obviously, he was a shoot-on stage expert, yet he admired Wang Lu, a mere chi-cultivating stage cultivator. Soon Wang Lu became his loyal lackey. Wang Lu was also impolite and directly promoted him to be the vice sect leader, in charge of fighting and other matters. Taoist Ming Yun's cultivation base was slightly lower than Yi Chuchen's, but his actual combat ability was several times higher. He was a real gold medal fighter. Therefore, when he heard Taoist Ming Yun's words, Yi Chuchen felt a headache. This guy was crazy. Except for Wang Lu's words, he didn't listen to anyone. He simply couldn't be reasoned with, and he often spoke malicious words. In the sect, he was a first-class villain. Yi Chuchen was also impolite. You only know how to fight and kill, it's easy for you to say that. In any case, it's not your turn to contribute. Wang Lu smiled. Vice sect leader's words are wrong. This time, Ming Yun also needs to contribute. No matter what kind of work we are in charge of, as long as we have a cultivation base, no one can escape. Yi Chuchen was somewhat surprised. Ming Yun is just adding to the mess. Ming Yun's eyes widened, and the madness in his eyes made Yi Chuchen's hair stand on end. Wang Lu laughed. Haha, of course we have to give Ming Yun the work that suits him. With that, he threw a piece of paper to Ming Yun. Taoist Ming Yun took a glance at it and was immediately attracted by it. He looked at it with rapt attention and from time to time he let out a sharp laugh. After sending Taoist Ming Yun away, Wang Lu said to the others, "This time the amount of work is extremely huge, and the resources invested are almost a heavy blow to the sect. However, this work is necessary, so even if it's hard and tiring, it must be completed, do you understand?" It was rare for the sect leader to seriously arrange things, so the people present also realized that this was not a trivial matter. They didn't see the two Spirit Sword sect elders flying in the air, but they vaguely felt that the Wisdom sect seemed to be facing a big test of life and death. If they were still loose cultivators in the face of this crisis, they would have already scattered like birds and beasts. However, at this time, as the high-level members of the Wisdom sect, their hearts were filled with vigorous fighting spirit. 3 days passed by in the blink of an eye. These 3 days were probably the busiest 3 days for the high-level members of the Wisdom sect. Especially, as the main force of the construction, the vice sect leader Yi Chuchen and his subordinates in charge of the 7 Stars department were so busy that they were almost out of breath. Among them, the dirty old man He Yun was the most miserable. After working overtime continuously, he originally intended to restore his magical power using the double cultivation method, but he found out that he was too tired and couldn't do it. The dirty old man cried and fainted on the spot. In these 3 days, Yi Chuchen also served as the infrastructure department head, leading the cultivators of the 7 Stars department to carry out a large-scale construction project. They crazily built arrays in a mountainous area next to the Wang family village, all in preparation for the Sword of Truth that was going to be held 3 days later. The drawing of the arrays came from the hands of Wang Lu, which was full of this Spirit Sword sect's top student's jaw-dropping crazy idea. When he received the drawing, Yi Chuchen's jaw almost hit the ground. On the drawing, more than 300 9th-rank gathering spirit arrays were interlocked to form the skeleton, and more than 68th-rank gathering spirit arrays were connected to each other, together forming the main body. In addition, the Tranquil Spirit Lamp, Pure Heart Pagoda, Spirit Awakening Hall, hundreds of different buildings were located in the middle of the array, forming a wonderful connection with each other. Although the grade of these buildings was not high, under the ingenious design, they could display an incredible effect. At the same time, in these 3 days, Lu Xian and Fang He quietly hid in the sky, silently watching Wang Lu's arrangement. Then they witnessed the fanatical followers of the Wisdom sect, in just 3 days, build a city in the middle of the mountain. Of course, it was not a big city. The open space between the mountains was not vast, but these hundreds of buildings, as well as the densely packed array circles, were more than the amount of work needed to build a city. To be able to complete all of this in 3 days, the Wisdom sect used no less than 30,000 people. This was the result of the sect's unscrupulous recruitment of all the people in the surrounding area. Among them, there were more than 1,000 chi cultivating stage cultivators. At the same time, The Wisdom sect also hired hundreds of Foundation establishment stage skilled workers from the mysterious Sky Mansion at a high price, which greatly enriched their strength. Of course, the most important thing was that Vice Sect leader Yi Chuchen and the team he led, without exception, personally entered the scene and did the most tiring and difficult work. Moreover, they constantly boosted the team's morale and excavated miraculous work efficiency. The other Vice Sect leader, Taoist Ming Yun, was also not at ease. In these 3 days he brought his own team of thugs to open the mountain and dig the river, releasing his crazy desire to destroy. And Wang Lu closely followed this group of people, leaving his own footprints on every trace of destruction. 3 days later Wang Lu dismissed all the followers, walked alone into the new city in the mountain, and stood on the high altar that was built for him. On top of his head, Lu Xian indifferently looked at everything that Wang Lu had. "Are you ready?" Wang Lu was silent for a moment, opened his eyes and then slowly opened his mouth. However, before his voice could come out, the mountains roared, the wind and clouds changed color, thousands of miles of clear sky instantly turned as dark as ink, day and night reversed, and a purple-blue lightning fell from the sky. It was like a heavenly tribulation had arrived. Wang Lu actually made the first move to gain the upper hand. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.